Are we good on your end? Okay. I'll just make sure I've got the agenda here. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September 8th, 2025 regular meeting of the Township of Montclair Planning Board. In accordance with the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building and by sending a copy to the newspaper designated by the Township for notices. This meeting is being broadcast live on Channel 34 and is streaming live and will be available on demand on YouTube. This meeting is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning that the board has powers and procedures resembling a court of law, and we are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them in order to provide the basis of an official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Fire exits are to my right, which is your left, and also the back of the room where you entered. As to the order of the evening, each application hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required, if any. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why variances are required. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, the attorney, and their expert witnesses. And if you're a member of the interested public, but not a witness in the case, of course, you will have 2 opportunities to speak. At the end of each witness's testimony, you'll be given the opportunity to ask the witness questions about his or her testimony. And that's not the time to tell the board what you think of the application. That actually comes later. And to ask questions, you'll have to come to the front of the room here, give us your name and address, and then ask your questions related to the witness's testimony only. And after the applicant's witnesses have been heard, members of the audience will then have their second opportunity to step forward. And at that time, you may express your opinions, positive or negative, about the application. Comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per person, and you get 1 chance to come up to the microphone, and I'll explain that a little bit later. After completion of the applicant's case and the public comment, the public hearing is closed, and at that time, the board members discuss the case and vote. At that time, you'll be able to listen to our discussion, but you will not be able to participate. And the first thing on our agenda is roll call.
Mayor Baskerville.
Present.
Mr. Borshoff.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Vice Chair Graham.
Here.
Mr. Ianwali.
Here.
Councillor Lockman.
Here.
Mr. Falaise is excused. Ms. Willis.
Here.
Mr. Neiman.
Here.
And Chair Brodock.
I'm here. Next up, we have swearing in of the board professionals.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you may give before this board tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next, we have the minutes from August 18th, 2025.
And I received some changes from Councillor Lockman. I don't know if there's any comments or any other changes?
One more comment. I believe, Counselor, you added a line about someone had suggested that the lots should be combined. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah, because it's not, I can't pull it up on my phone.
I see.
I just thought we should also add that the applicant noted that they attempted to purchase the adjacent lots, but were unsuccessful. So I think we should just make that addition.
Which, are you on page 3?
Page 3.
Which item?
There, it was a red line item. I don't have it. I can't pull it up.
Okay.
I can't pull it up on my phone here.
Okay. So what's your addition again?
My addition is that the applicant stated that they attempted to purchase adjacent lots but were unsuccessful.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved?
Second.
Is that, Mayor, is that you?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Okay. That brings us to application 2914 for 10 Hartley Street.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Alan Tremulak appearing for the applicant, 10 Hartley LLC. This is a continuation of this application for site plan approval and 2 variances for this property. We were last here 3 weeks ago. There was, I think, extensive testimony and public questioning of Ryan Robertson. He has since made some additional final revisions to the plans to address some of the comments from the board, as well as the comments in Janice Talley's recent updated planning memo. So what I'd like to do is have Mr. Robertson review the additional plan revisions this evening, and following his testimony, then we have 1 additional witness, our professional planner. We'll be done.
Mr. Robertson, you recognize that you remain under oath?
Sir. Janice, do we need to mark exhibits before we get started?
Yeah, the revised plans, it's really hard to read this date. Marked August 29th, 2025. You can read?
This one?
No, that's the stamped, this one.
Oh.
August.
August 29th.
Yeah, that's A17, and the PowerPoint presentation will be A18.
And do we need to mark the other exhibit that was distributed to the board?
Yes, that will be the email communications between my office and the fire official. Latest date, September 8th, 2025, and we can mark that A19.
Okay. Janice, do you also want to mark your updated planning memo? We usually mark those.
Oh, you're right. That'll be A20. That was my planning board memo dated September 3rd, 2025.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ryan, would you discuss the most recent plan revisions?
Yes.
I assume you're going to utilize the updated or the supplemental PowerPoint that you've prepared, so.
Okay. Yep, so we prepared some revisions based on some of the comments.
Is your mic definitely on?
Nope, now it is.
Okay,
Is that
great.
better? So we made some updates to the application based on comments we heard from the board and from questions from the public. I have a couple of slides here to go through. The first slide here is just the rendering. One of the main changes was we lowered the height of the building by 24 inches. So that you can see here in the parapet height. That's all dimensioned in this slide. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Robertson, but does that also lower the ceilings inside?
No.
Okay, thank you.
24 inches. So we were asking for 48.5 feet was our height, and now it's 46.5. And in addition, there was some discussion about the north facade. We removed the 3rd floor terrace right here on the 3rd floor and moved it to the rear facing west. And in the Exhibit A20, the planning memo, it was suggested, comment number 4, to take a look at revising the location of this staircase to give better rooms, better access to windows, and we agreed with that. This is what we've come up with. This is different from what you have the hard copy of. So you can see we moved the stair right here, and then it comes up here, and it gives corner windows to this bedroom, and it gives corner windows to this living room. Next slide shows what you have, and you'll see where the stair was in the hard copy submission.
Mr. Robertson,
Yes, sir.
this is a new plan?
This on the screen is what you have, and then the previous slide is a change based on the memo which we got after we submitted.
And I understand that, but is that previous slide a new slide that's not included in the exhibits?
No, it's in your handout.
Oh, it's part of this handout?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Sorry for the confusion. Next slide. And here we'll go over the changes to the colored elevations. On the east elevation, the only change is the drop in the parapet. There's a dashed red line in your handout that shows where it was previously. Same thing with the south elevation. The only change is the drop in parapet height. Slide, please. On the west elevation, you see we've added the terrace right here, the third floor terrace that was previously facing north. And we've made some changes to the materiality for the brick and some changes to the windows. And on the north, there was previously the terrace was right here on the third floor. Here you can see it moved to the rear facing west. And we've added these recessed areas of brick to provide some visual interest and some different materiality on the north facade. These would be infilled recesses with thin brick. It's full brick everywhere else, but thin brick here to create a shadow line. They would have stone lintels and sills. And Mr. Chairman, on the last hearing, you brought up this roof access ladder and that we would need to provide OSHA fall protection. We talked about that. And in lowering the parapet, the next slide please, shows what we will need to do. We reached out to an OSHA compliance expert and helped specify what we're proposing here, which is an easy series fixed access ladder mounted to the wall there. At the top, there will be what's called a pass-through termination and the guardrail return system. This guardrail wouldn't be yellow, but these are just illustrations from their pamphlet. This has to be 42 inches above the roof height. And once you're on the roof, a service person can clip into a horizontal travel restraint. So there would be this standoff stanchion secured to the structure with a cable that they can secure themselves to. And the only reason anyone would really go up there is to service the roof leaders.
It's not, excuse me, it's not any kind of fire escape?
No.
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 And it could
Just-
not be used for that inadvertently?
No.
There's no access from any window? Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Are they clipping into the ladder too when they're going up? Is that part of the discussion?
I think it can be. We would have to check with the OSHA requirements and we would design it so that it is that. But I believe, well, yeah, there is some sort of system. It has to do with the height, I believe, of the ladder. And this is not a very tall ladder.
Right.
So I
My
don't
concern
believe-
was more, yes, you probably don't need to clip in on this ladder for, at that level
Right.
and for the height, but just if somebody were to fall to the side, for instance, it's a long way down to the ground. That was kind of the point I was trying to make.
Yeah.
Was that, yeah, and I appreciate what you've done here. My point was, even if it's not necessarily required, have somebody clip in going up
Clip
the
in at the
ladder.
stairs? Sure, we would be happy to
Yeah.
make sure.
It's
we put
just,
that-
it's a suggestion. I don't think this is necessarily a planning board thing, but just as I look at things like that,
Yeah.
I feel like I have to say something.
Yeah, my understanding is the first stanchion would be located right here, and that's where they clip in.
Mhm.
But we can make sure we specify a ladder that integrates the two.
Could
And
I
just-
ask who has access to that ladder? Is it something that a tenant could use to get to the roof, or?
Is your microphone on, Ms. Willis?
Yes, I did. It's
Okay.
on.
Just move it
If you can
closer
just,
to you.
that'd be,
Hello.
there we
Much better.
go. Just so we can hear you.
Okay. Only service only. It wouldn't be, tenants couldn't use it, so it would be locked so that a tenant couldn't use it.
How do you lock a ladder?
I think there's a sliding panel that locks, so you can't get up
Okay.
the first few rungs.
But it ends or begins at the tenant's balcony, right? And you have to get through it through the tenant's apartment, is that correct?
Yes.
Hmm.
Right, that's correct.
I can see myself climbing that as a little kid, getting to the roof. All right, whatever.
Okay. This detail is in response to the planning memo, planning considerations number 1. Details should be provided illustrating the depth of the recessed thin brick on the north facade. So here's an illustration of the typical wall assembly. Starting at the exterior of the stud wall would be rigid insulation, and then a drainage mat, and then full brick. That's what you see, the majority of the red brick. Where we're having the recesses, this full brick is just substituted with thin brick and a drainage mat. And on the projection here, you probably can't see, but I'm sure you can see in your handout, you see the outline of the thin brick, or the full brick beyond. And so if I'm reading the planning memo right, you're looking for how deep of a recess that is, and it would be about 3 inches, 3 1/8, I think.
That's the key number,
That's the
3
key
1/8
number.
inches.
Yes. Next slide, please.
And that's just where those, fake windows are?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This is a revised composite image from last time. Last time we had shown possibility of this one-story gym adding stories above, and it was a confusing image. So this is just intended to show what the proposed building would look like from Bloomfield Avenue with no adjacent construction. And there you can see kind of shaded, indicating those thin brick recesses, and on top you have the two terraces. This is another image we had last time, and we've added information for clarity. And Mr. Iannelli pointed out that our satellite image still showed the old church, so we did a 3D massing model showing the proposed building and put it in place where it is here. So now you can see it in its full context, and we revised the height here on the letter H to be 46.5 feet. We then took that SketchUp model, put it into Google Earth, and the next 4 slides show the context from 4 different views. So here you see 10 Hartley, the proposed 10 Hartley building within its context when viewed looking north. Next. Here we see looking east. There's 10 Hartley right here, kind of hidden behind this little grove of trees. There's New York City in the distance. Next slide. Looking south, here's the proposed 10 Hartley, right in kind of the middle. You can see the vestry building and the Montclair in the foreground, school in the background. Next slide. And finally, here's that same model placed into Google Earth with the view looking west. And you can see its context and its height relationship to everything around it. And that summarizes the changes that we've made this month.
Why did you reduce the height?
Well, we didn't have to. We're well under the height requirements, but we heard some feedback from the community that they were concerned about the scale of the building, and we had a parapet height that didn't have to be as tall as it was. It could be that tall and provide fall protection. And by lowering it, we just did what we showed on the previous slide by adding extra safety measures up on the roof, but we were able to lower it.
Just the parapet came
Just the
down.
parapet, right.
To Councilor Lockman's question, none of the ceilings were reduced inside.
Correct, and none of the structure was reduced or anything.
Does it still hide? There must be some mechanical stuff on the roof, right? Is it still hidden from view by the
There's no
parapet?
mechanical stuff
There's
on the
no
roof.
mechanical at all?
Yeah,
Okay.
The applicant is a mechanical contractor, so he's very involved in the design of mechanical systems for the building.
Nice.
Ryan, I think you addressed 3 of the 4 planning considerations in Ms. Talley's recent memo, and the one you haven't mentioned deals with
Samples.
proposed building materials.
That's right. I brought some physical samples and another exhibit. So I've got hard copies here. I don't know if I have enough for everyone, but you could pass them around. That's
What is that actually, Ryan?
That
you're
is
handing around?
a digital sample board of these physical samples that I'm handing out. I have all the physical samples except for the red brick that you'll see on there. We were unable to get those in time, but we will submit those to the revision committee if you would like to see them. So if you want to take it and look around.
Can we keep these copies of samples?
You can, yep.
So I'll mark the handout is A21 and the physical samples are A22.
Is it obvious which samples which go on yours?
You can have it if you want it. That's all they had. Okay, yeah.
So this is the thin brick? Or is this?
No, wait, I'll go through each letter there. Sorry, I'll go through each letter on your handout. The first floor is letter C. That is a gray, English gray velour brick. And above that is a cast stone band on the elevation, which is labeled B. Above that, the majority of the red brick is A. And red brick, we were unable to obtain a sample of the red brick.
It looks like a traditional or typical red brick. Right?
It's a traditional red brick, right, and it's variegated. We have a sample selected, Glengarry Old England, which we'll submit. And then the accent brick inside the thin brick is G, which is Glengarry Old Liberty.
Mr. Robbins, can I just ask you, when you say brick, are you really talking about brick?
Yeah.
You're not talking about I don't know what you call, what?
Veneer.
No, full
Veneer.
brick.
That's real, like the brick you'd see in most of the Montclair houses.
Yeah, full
Okay.
modular brick.
So does an individual have to go and do the brick? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. By piece,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah,
all right,
masonry
thank-
construction, yep.
Yeah, masonry. Thank you.
The other colors we have here is D. That is an Aluka Bond powder-coated metal panel. That's at the window surrounds. Also at the storefront color and the parapet cap. That was called Greyhound is the name of the color. E is the window we've selected. It's a Marvin window, aluminum clad. The color is Cadet Gray. And then H is the just black aluminum for the railings and the ladder.
This is what they have. That's the handout.
And then they have this down.
Oh, okay. All right. Is there anything else that's been changed that you haven't already discussed?
Nope.
Okay. No further questions?
Questions from the board?
Yes, I have a question. Okay. If you go, you have a new September 2nd.
As well as, if I might, I apologize for interrupting, but I did have one additional question that I wanted to ask him, because I think it
That's
might
all
have
right.
been one
Go
of your
right ahead.
concerns. Regarding the emails that we received that were marked as A19 email exchanges with the fire official. Can you discuss
Right.
that? And
Yes.
most importantly, is the building going to be sprinklered?
Right. So we received the email that's going to be entered, it has been entered into evidence, correspondence between Ms. Talley and Justin Thompson, the fire official. And it was asking if there was an issue with fire safety access for the apartments that we're proposing. The plan was shared with Mr. Thompson. He reviewed and took a look and said the fire department does not have a problem with the construction of this building. That was forwarded to the board. Mr. Braddock replied back, is the fire department comfortable with this site plan if additional development occurs up to the property lines on the non-street sides? And
You don't need to read the emails.
Sure.
I think the point is the building going to be sprinklered, and is there any other fire safety
right,
code requirements
sure. The
that
building,
are applicable?
yeah, the building is required to be sprinklered, and we are required to have 1 hour fire resistance at the primary structural frame and the exterior bearing walls. The fire official seemed to be asking what would be required of neighboring construction, and they would have the same requirements depending on their occupancy, but they would be required to do a minimum of 1 hour, in my estimation, for their construction. And their sprinkler requirements would depend. We wouldn't know. Yes.
Another question. So when you say the building is sprinkled, I'm assuming obviously the apartments are sprinkled. So my concern, and I had discussed this with Ms. Willis briefly, we have a long driveway to get in that's a covered driveway. Is there a sprinkler in there if there was some problem with a car that had a fire or something?
Yeah, there would have to be.
So that's going to
right.
be sprinkled. The driveway will be sprinkled?
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Thank you.
And probably, well, certainly above the ADA parking space would have to have
Oh.
a sprinkler too, but it would be like a dry system, I think,
Mhm.
so.
And access to water, is there any kind of water hydrant or anything in the back if there was a car fire in the back?
None proposed.
Yeah.
I
Is
don't
that-
think it would be required, and if it was required, it would be flagged by the permit review, and we would have to add it.
Okay. Am I ready for mine? Okay.
Good by me.
All right. Looking at the first page of the September the 2nd layout of the apartment and whatever, on the very first page, I'm looking at the surrounding buildings. And because it is under the redevelopment plan, none of those buildings are really there right now. But the expectation is that within some period of time that there will be the plan put in place. And each of those buildings, like yours, is allowed to build to the property line. And I'm looking at the front page, Building 3. And Building 2, I think you've had some feedback that you reported that he's planning to do.
The property to the north, right,
Right.
is interested.
And then on the other side, there's Building 4. And behind, there's Building 25 that extends all the way back, or that property 25 extends all the way back.
I'm not sure what sheet you're referring to. with
The very cover
the
sheet,
first-
the very front cover sheet of the,
Okay.
In the lower left is your location, tax, and zoning map.
Thank you.
And I think the numbers that Ms. Willis is referring to are the lots.
Lot numbers, right?
Correct.
I see it now.
okay.
Okay, sorry, I'm on.
No, that's fine. Okay, so what I'm looking at is that to the right, to the left, and behind, they're all building to the property line.
Right, they all fall within the new RA zone, which has a 0
Right.
side and
So my
front.
question is there any access to the parking lot on the number 10 lot, Hartley, other than going through the driveway that leads into the building?
There
It's
is not.
absolutely walled in. It's walled in on all three sides. The only access that has a street access is Hartley Street, which is the front of the building.
Right.
Okay. Well, okay, now then, the follow-up question is, my particular concern is about apartment 3.
Unit 3.
And I
yeah.
appreciate that you did improve that a lot, because we now have access to bedrooms with windows. Are those, it doesn't have the word egress on any of the windows. Are they big enough?
They are big enough. I thought they did have the word egress on them. Let
They
me
did,
see.
the other one did. You
The
had
other
one that
did?
was,
I see. Let me just navigate to that page. Oh, I see. On your handout, you're looking where it's the old stair layout.
but I'm
So-
looking at the new, you had me at the table tonight.
Okay. Can we go to page, I think it was page 2 or 3? 3. Right. These two windows are both sized for egress. And this is a living room. It doesn't require an egress window, but they're the same size. These would also work as egress windows in the case of an emergency.
Okay. Now, a person could get out of that window,
Yes.
but the only access to the back where that third apartment has no front access at all. It's built behind the
That's
second
right.
apartment. The second apartment has all the front view access.
That's right.
And the third apartment has no front view access. It's walled in on both sides, so the only thing is the back. There's a window there. Without any access for a fire truck or whatever, how do they get, once they're out, how do they get out of that situation of getting down?
Right, there's the balcony right here on the third floor unit. So anyone on the yeah.
Which balcony are you speaking? I'm looking at the.
Unit 3?
Unit 3.
Unit 3's balcony on the third floor faces the rear. So that's an area of rescue.
So how does the rescue get there?
Well, I mean,
No, I'm just asking, because
Yeah.
if the only access is a 10-foot wide driveway, a fire truck can't get back there, obviously.
right, a fire truck
There's
couldn't.
no access from any street or because it's all buildings right up to the property line surrounding that backyard.
Right.
Where the
A
parking
fire-
lot is.
Yeah, you're right. A fire truck could not pull underneath the building and rescue someone. Fire personnel could come with a ladder and rescue someone. And there could also there's other means to get down. There's fire escape ladders, or not ladders, but you drop them down, you hook them onto things.
Oh, but there
Uh,
are none provided.
Well, there's none shown. I don't believe that would be required by code, but we would provide whatever is required. But I'm not talking about something that's attached to the building. I'm talking about like something you would keep in a closet next door that lets you get down. I have one in my attic. It's like a rope ladder almost that you can put through a window.
So you're saying that the apartment will be provided with rope ladder to get down from the third floor to the ground?
If it was required by code, we would include it in the
But
drawings.
if it's not required by code, they roast or what? I mean, I'm not quite sure what you're saying.
I'm saying I believe what we have drawn meets code for fire escape and rescue.
And if it doesn't?
And if it doesn't, we will
You'll
comply.
have to revise the plans to comply, or else you won't get building.
We won't get a building permit without, right?
All right?
Yeah.
Is there any, from what I can understand from looking at it, there is a back door from the, in addition to the driveway, there is a back door which lets you into the building, but there is no stairway that lets you up the back way. Is that correct?
Right, you have to enter through the corridor and into the front entry vestibule.
Right. So
to get to
the,
stairs.
particularly looking at that third apartment again, that if you're on the second or third floor, unless you're using the window egress, you have to go to the first floor, I mean, to the level 3 first floor, and out through the front, even though you're in the back building, back of the building. So there is
Right.
no, would it be possible to provide a stairway, a back stairway to the building at all?
I don't believe it would be possible to fit, but when you're in Unit 3, what you're saying is you go out to this door, and it takes a long way to get down the stairs out to the front of the building.
Right, you've
But
got to
once
go
once you enter this green area, you're within a safe 1-hour rated enclosure. So as soon as you, this door is fire rated, so as soon as you're here, you're safe. You go down all the way to the first floor, you enter the entry vestibule, which is also fire protected from the rest of the building. So this is the exit access point. You know what I mean?
So as far as the fire code and as you're concerned, that the need to go only through the front exit, even though you're in the back, is still okay?
Yeah, yeah, in an emergency, they would be corralled out the front. They would be encouraged to go out the front door. Right. All occupants of the building would, because that's the
Oh, I'm
routing
sure
of
they
the-
would be, if it were possible, they would. But I'm not sure it would be, well,
But that's the only means of egress, to clarify?
I'm sorry, say
That's
again?
the only exit, to clarify? That's the only exit?
Well, the egress windows are also a secondary means of.
No,
that is
understood.
the
I'm just
only-
saying, if you're going to go down the stair, I mean, you're not going to jump out the window on the third floor. So you're saying this stairs in an
Yeah,
those stairs are the only means to get to the street level?
yes, and the
Okay.
building's fully sprinkled.
No, understood. I'm just trying to understand, to get some
Right.
clarity. And it's built up to the lot line on, what is it? That's lot 25, right? So the back goes all the way to the lot line as well, right? Just a refresher, just to
No,
refresh.
you're asking if this is at the lot
Yeah.
line? No, that is quite some distance.
Okay.
the
I'll tell
parking
you.
lot is at the lot line.
Parking lot is,
Yes.
okay. And if need be, fire code would have you install a fire escape or something back there if required, right?
Right.
Okay.
One more question that with regards to the driveway.
Yes.
The driveway which you're proposing, you're looking for a waiver from a 12-foot requirement width to a 10-foot.
Right.
But I'm wondering, given that the driveway is the only means to get to the parking lot or to get out of the parking lot, and that is a walled driveway, is the 12, I have been, what I read is that the town, although we are 12-foot required, reducing it to a 10 is below what is recommended for a walled driveway, right?
So I can address that. If you're looking at the sheet A002 of the drawings that were submitted, almost the entire length of the driveway is 12 feet. You can see there's a dimension there under the word driveway. There is a garage door, an overhead rolling door, that is a pinch point. That's 10.25 feet. So the area that we're asking for variance relief on is only from the property line back relief, maybe 5 or 6 feet to the garage door. And then we have a driveway width that is fully compliant. So,
The non-compliant area that you just mentioned is at the front.
is,
Exit to Hartley Street.
yep, and it is due to the garage door.
But still, at some point, you're saying just for a few feet, it's only 10 feet, is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, for the first 6 feet or so, it's 10.25 feet wide. And as soon as you pass through the garage door, it opens up to 12 feet. And then it's the entire rest of the length of the building is 12 feet wide. So removing the garage door and making thinner walls is a way to comply, but that would affect the aesthetics of the outside and some of the other things that we worked with the DRC in setting this area back and having pedestrian safety measures. So, yeah, we're proposing the 10.25 variance for the garage door itself.
Thank you.
I had a question on the new plan set.
Yes.
That I just got. Right in the middle, there's a bar that's called height ampersand setbacks. And then under that, the word residential, and then you go into the bedroom.
Can you say what sheet you're on? I'm sorry.
This T001.00, the cover sheet.
Okay.
And right smack dab in the middle,
Height and setbacks. That part?
where it says heights and setbacks. I would have
Yes.
thought that the heights and setbacks are listed under that, but it doesn't seem to be the case. So I just, and then I went to.
I think it's above it. So the, instead of a heading, it's like the information is above what you're considering the heading. So that's building height 67 feet.
Right,
Yep.
right.
It's just reading the opposite direction.
Just was confused by that.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Other questions from the board? Are there folks from the public that would like to ask this witness questions? And what I would ask so that we can, I suspect there are several folks that want to ask Mr. Robertson questions. So what I'd ask is to gather your questions and each person come up once to the microphone and ask Mr. Robertson any questions you'd like about his testimony tonight. I'm not sure the mic's on.
Sarah Avery,
Yes, thank you.
25 Irving Street. I'm just a little confused. At the top of this hearing, Mr. Trembulac claimed that you're applying for 2 variances?
2 variances in the driveway, that we believe is called a design waiver.
I see.
Opposed to a variance.
Okay, so you have a 62 lot size reduction, right? Then you have the lot coverage. Then you have the parking space, right? You're supposed to have 5 parking spaces, but you only have 4. Then you have the parking is supposed to be 4 foot from the property line, and your parking is only 1.5 foot. And then you have the driveway. So you want to call them waivers, or that's a lot of leeway.
Do you have a question for Mr. Robertson?
Yeah, the parking, so one of the spaces is an ADA space, and one, I believe you said, was a charger space. So who parks in the, so you've got 3 apartments in this building? Are there 3 apartments in this building?
Yes.
Okay, and supposedly you need 5 parking spaces, but you're only going to provide 4, and of those 4, 1 is an ADA space and 1 is a charger space. So my question is, who's parking in the ADA space?
We only need 4 parking spaces. We show 3, and we get a credit for the EV charger station. So we comply with the parking requirements. We're not asking for a
But
variance.
that was my question.
Okay.
I said, who parks in the ADA space? Who parks there?
It'd be designated by building management.
So are you saying that a person who is not handicapped is going to use that space?
Yeah, if there's,
That's
if there's
what you're
no,
saying?
if there's no handicapped tenants, yeah.
Well, I mean, a handicapped person couldn't live in that building anyway, because how are they going to get up the stairs? And who parks in the charger space?
I just answered whoever they decide, whoever building management designates the space for.
So if every resident, right, you got 4 cars, right, for the 3 apartments, and let's say every resident has an EV, right? It's highly likely that every resident would have an EV. And you just said they're going to designate, management is going to designate who parks in the charger space.
Well, you're mixing it up. The charger space is not the ADA space. The charger space
No, I know
is
it's not the
split
ADA
between the
space.
other 2 spaces.
No, I understand that. I was saying, who's parking, if all 4 vehicles are EVs, and you're saying, well, I know you're not a handicapped resident, but you can park in the handicap spot. And then you've got another resident with an EV, but they don't have access to the EV charger. So you have 4 residents with EVs, and only 2 people have access to the EV charger. How does that make sense?
We're not required to provide any
Okay.
EV chargers, so we're providing one to meet the parking demand.
Now, the other issue on parking is, when you look at the redevelopment plan, there are goals, right? There's 6 goals. First goal is increase parking capacity. And Mrs. Willis just finished talking about how none of the other buildings in the neighborhood would have access to the parking at 10 Hartley. And increasing parking capacity, you know, if you read the plan, you know, there's a lot of discussion about shared parking. So I don't see
Is
how...
there a question?
Yeah, I'm trying to find out, how does this application, how does it contribute to the goal of increased parking capacity when you're not even providing the required number of spaces?
I'm going
We-
to just jump in.
But I'm not asking you, Mr. Tremblack, I'm asking Mr. Robertson.
Indicated we're providing the required number of spaces, which is 4. And we're not required to provide more than what's required for our property.
So...
It'd be nice if we could,
Yeah.
but we don't have any room to provide more spaces, but we provide enough. We meet the township.
No, the application requires 5,
No.
and you're asking for a variance to reduce it to 4.
No, we're not. The application requires 4.
And then my question is, how does this plan contribute to the first goal of this 2006 redevelopment plan to increase parking capacity?
It's adding 3 off-street parking spaces that don't previously exist. So it's
But there wasn't
adding parking.
there weren't residents there.
Sharon, we're arguing the point. We meet the requirement. We're not required to provide more than 4. We provide 4, so.
Yeah, but that's not my question.
But Mr. Robertson answered your question to his ability. He said he's providing, this project's providing off-site parking that didn't exist.
But there was no need for parking there. They have
But he
increased
answered your
need
question.
for parking.
My point is he answered your question.
Right.
Right?
But
And
he
this is
hasn't answered my question because you cannot satisfy a goal to increase parking capacity when you have increased the need for additional parking. You have created a need for parking.
Robert,
And-
our obligation is to meet that.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It says it,
What does that?
right here.
All right, so.
Increase parking
Just
capacity.
want to argue the point. How much more spaces are we supposed to provide based upon the goal of increasing parking spaces?
The problem that you have, Mr. Trembulac, is that this is not a buildable lot, and you're trying to squeeze something onto a lot that can't fit, okay?
Well, I think
In-
we've
in-
shown that.
Mr. Tremblay,
I'll save the
for
rest of
both
my
sides, this
questions
is
for
questions
later,
for
because-
your witness, not necessarily questions for the audience. Are there other folks in the audience who would like to, please? I think Ms. Malloy is.
Good evening. Deirdre Malloy, Montclair resident. Thank you for your testimony. Just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions. With regard to the egress, there's only one main egress, and for clarity's sake, the second and third floor do not have an egress besides the window.
Yeah, the window is the second means of, the required second means of egress for bedrooms.
Right. And if in the event, and I think it was alluded to prior to me getting here, if in the event the front portion of the building where the only egress is blocked due to some type of a fire or maybe interior collapse, then the residents would need to go to the back of the building and exit through the window and maybe onto a balcony.
Yeah, yeah.
So each floor has a balcony.
Just the fourth and third floors have a balcony. There's no balcony on this. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there is on the second floor as well.
And what's the drop from the fourth floor?
Give me one moment, sorry.
Sure.
The fourth floor is 33 foot 4 inches above grade.
And then the third floor would be maybe 30-something?
22 8, and the second floor is 12.
Okay. Is the landlord intending on providing one of those ladders that you recommended?
Like the rope ladder?
Or chain ladder?
I think he would provide it if it's required by code.
Okay.
And I don't believe it is required by code, but he certainly would.
Okay. So, for the sake of your remark, you don't believe it's required by code. Has anybody verified whether it's required by code?
I mean, we do initial code analysis when we do the drawings to present to the board. Further code analysis is done when we do construction documents. Those get submitted to the board, or to the building department, and they route it through fire and all sorts of, and zoning and all of that. So that goes through multiple layers of checks and balances to make sure we meet the obligations.
Correct. So at this point, then, this has not made it to that phase?
No, we haven't done construction
Okay.
documents yet.
And I believe I heard you say earlier that if and when it does, and there would be additional requirements, that you would make the adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if we got comments from the building department or the fire department, we address the comments and then resubmit.
Okay. Another question. With regard to the building being sprinklered, typically that's only for common areas. Are each of the units sprinkler fitted?
Yes. Yeah, the
Okay.
entire building's required.
And so you have drawings for that?
No, but I know, just from speaking to the applicant today, that he's already engaged with a fire suppression company. They've done calculations and stuff. I don't know how far along they are in the process, but that's early for this stage to have
Okay.
that even.
Well, especially since I just found out that you haven't had any other documents prepared for buildings. Those will be submitted along with the other plans?
Yep.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. My name is Dave Herron, 136 Lincoln Street. I have one question because I'm a little confused. This building only has one point of egress in case of a fire? for the third floor people?
It has one egress door, and then it has the required egress windows.
Windows, okay. Are you familiar with New Jersey Fire Code?
Yes.
Well, and things could have changed, because we're in a rapidly changing environment, but last I checked, New Jersey Fire Code requires multiple residential buildings to have two.
And this would be a question, right, for Mr. Robertson?
Yes. They require 2 points of egress. How are you getting around, and, spare me with the window. You get a 70-year-old woman, she's not hopping out of a window.
So,
Go ahead.
okay. So, buildings that require two separate staircases is dependent on the square footage of the building. This building is small, such that it only requires one.
Even though are you aware the international building code requires 2?
This building does not require 2, per the IBC and per the IFC and per the UCC.
Your contention is because it's below the size level?
Yeah, for the size threshold.
Okay, we shall see. Thank you.
Ask a question?
We'll have, since this gentleman started coming up, let's have his question first.
Good evening, board members, Mr. Tremulak, Mr. Robinson. Is this on?
Oh, yeah, much better.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, have it a little bit closer to your mouth if you wouldn't mind.
I'm Jeffrey Robert Grayson, and I'm a lifelong resident of Montclair. I have a few questions I'd like to ask you. You're seeking a waiver to reduce the width of the driveway from the required 12 feet to 10 feet, and you have a small parking area capable of supplying 4 spaces, of which 1 is handicapped. In the event of a major snowstorm, what would be your method of snow removal? Would it be a snow plow, snow blower, or shovel? And where would you put the snow?
I believe the applicant will be hiring private hauling for. He's going to provide a radiant heat system, and anytime there's a blizzard, in properties like this, the owner does private hauling and they haul the snow away to another location.
Well, how would you haul the snow away if you only have a 10-foot driveway?
Yeah, I mean, they'll bring in smaller trucks and take it away by the truckload.
Okay, with the handicap space that you're providing, do you anticipate renting to a handicapped person with no elevator?
I don't think he would just rent to whoever comes to rent from him, and it's not required to have an elevator. Handicap spaces, you can be immobilized otherwise, not need a wheelchair. So someone that's handicapped could still live here and could still be on the 3rd floor or the 2nd floor.
Okay. Based on what you'll be charging for rent, what is the median income of the tenants you're looking for?
I can object to that question. There's no relevance whatsoever.
It's also not anything that Mr. Robertson testified to.
Yeah, also he would.
Okay. It was mentioned that an engineer had designed a grading and drainage plan that would include an underground retention basin with piping that would transport the water to a catch basin on the corner of Hartley and Bloomfield Avenue. Will that piping run under the sidewalk or under the street?
So we have the planning testimony coming up, who is also prepared to comment on the drawings prepared by Petrie Engineering. I'd have to look it up myself here to answer, because I think it's a simple question I could answer unless Mr. Stimmel will take it.
Or the board engineer might be able to.
Yeah, the board engineer might remember if it goes under the sidewalk or the street.
In prior discussions, it was discussed that the piping would be within the street so as to not disturb the driveways and the recently constructed sidewalks along that side of Hartley Street, so.
Thank you.
Okay, so you would have to go under, you're going under the street, so you would have to dig and go, okay.
Correct.
All right. Catch basins have 3 water volume capacities. What will the capacity of your basin be?
I don't know the answer to that.
So the storage provided underneath the parking lot area is noted to be 565 cubic feet of storage.
Okay, that's the retention basin.
Correct.
That's going to funnel out to a catch basin on the corner of Hartley and Bloomfield.
Correct.
I'm asking you what the capacity volume of the catch basin will be. Because my questions are about the catch basin, not the retention basin.
We don't have that information readily available.
You're talking about the catch basin
On the
not
corner.
our property, but on the town's.
That will run to, you said the engineer was going to run piping from the retention basin to the catch basin on the corner of Hartley and Bloomfield Avenue.
Meaning the catch basin that's owned by the town, part of the town's drainage or sewage system.
Well, that's not how you expressed it. It was said that the retention basin would run to the catch basin on the corner. And there are specific volume capacities to catch basins that are very critical, okay, and how they're maintained. And, I mean, I can talk about that if you like.
The
Okay.
point is, though, it's not our catch basin, it's the town's.
Okay, well, a catch basin.
But you don't
is-
have any information on the size of that catch basin?
We wouldn't have it.
Wasn't
No, and
prepared
it's
to
not something
discuss that.
You don't
Yeah.
have, well, you don't have, it wasn't part of the application.
Correct.
I guess, the information that you've been providing, Mr. Hernandez, is based on the application in front of you, not necessarily
That's
township
correct.
records,
That's
right?
correct.
So, okay.
I might
So
be able to help,
Is
just
it
with a
possible
question, I
that
might be able to help a
information is
little bit.
important?
I mean, it's a detention basin, not a retention basin, right? You're detaining the water because then it's ultimately released into the street, right? So I think what he's asking for is it is going to overrun the street. Those are pretty basic engineering calculations. So you catch water, it's detained, and then it slowly goes out. So I would think that, not that, I mean, I don't know if you have it, but those are pretty basic calculations.
I think the question is the volume of the catch basins going into, and we just don't have that information. And I agree it's important, it just, we don't have the information, and Mr. Robertson didn't testify to it.
Okay. I can give you some information on catch basins if you'd like. if it would
I think
help.
if you want to give something to, Mr. Hernandez, since it's a township-owned catch basin, I think that'd be fine, but I don't
Can I
think
read
it's,
it into the record, or?
not at this
No?
point, 'cause this is for
Okay.
questions for Mr. Robertson about his testimony.
Okay. All right, well, catch basins need to be cleaned. They can't just be set and forget, because they can attract rodents.
And this will be a question for Mr. Robertson
Yes,
about his
I want to talk about a
testimony.
cleaning schedule, but I want to set up the question with this. Regular cleaning is required to keep it functioning properly. What would be your cleaning schedule, and who would be responsible?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not the civil engineer that didn't prepare any of the calculations or the design of the system, so I can't answer that question.
Okay. Well, it seems like the catch basin questions are kind of unable to be answered.
Correct.
And I'll just say this for the record, in a worst-case scenario with a catch basin, if it's not maintained properly,
This is a
and it's
question,
not cleaned properly, it could cause a sinkhole.
and this is a question for Mr.
And I'm
Robertson?
just, for the record, so you understand, catch basins are important. And how they're maintained is important.
I don't
So
disagree with you.
That's
I'm
why
just,
I had questions about it, but it seems
No,
like
I-
they can't be answered.
I understand. I don't disagree with the point you're making. I'm just,
I'm
you know,
sorry.
at this point of the hearing, it's for questions about his testimony. He's not, you know, frankly, he's not qualified
Well,
as an expert in engineering.
I just formulated these questions. I heard what was testified to at the last meeting. And these things are they're complicated. We're not able to formulate questions on the fly without doing research.
I agree.
So you come back with questions that are dedicated to that research that you've done. And those are the answers I'm looking for. So
I would just like to clarify, when you say catch basin, you're speaking about a different basin than the one that is on the property, which
Yes.
we're calling a retention basin, I
Yes.
think. So the catch basin is the town-owned infrastructure.
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to have that, make sure that we're clear
Correct.
about that.
assume there's regular maintenance or cleaning done of all catch basins in town. This would be no different than the rest, unless I'm missing something. Again, it's not our catch basin, it's the town's.
And this,
Okay.
Mr. Hernandez, if I can ask you, this is something that gets reviewed. You know, once they submit their building application, this gets reviewed, you know, how much water's coming into that catch basin, capacity, sizing, you know, some of the things that this gentleman is raising, that
Yeah.
gets evaluated by the Township Engineering Department, which happens to be
Yeah.
you and your
absolutely.
firm.
Yeah, nobody would be permitted to discharge to a structure downstream in an amount greater than has already historically been going there. So,
So that's the type of thing you evaluate
Correct.
at the building permit stage.
Correct.
So I think your questions will get covered, just not in this forum.
Okay. Well, that's all I have. Thank you.
And if you do have specific things you want to send to Mr. Hernandez, please do.
Okay.
Kind of outside of this hearing, but, you know, as our township engineer, as a representative of the township engineer,
I just feel it's important that certain things are on the record in case something happens down the road. We have a record of what was discussed.
and you'll also have another opportunity, once the applicant is finished with all their expert witnesses, there's a time in which any member of the public can come up and make any comment they want about this application.
I understand.
That would be another good time to make sure that any of your thoughts are on the record about this application.
I may not be here that late, but thank you very much.
You're welcome. Are there other members of the public that wish to ask Mr. Robertson questions about his testimony tonight? I don't see any more, Mr. Tremblak.
Okay. My next and I believe final witness is William Stimmel.
Oh, sorry, hang on.
Mr. Robertson?
Counselor Lockman.
Mr. Robertson, I had one more question for you. So the sprinkler system that's going to be installed, that's an addition in this, that's voluntarily, it's not.
No, it's a building code
Oh, it
requirement.
is
Yeah.
required. Okay, thank you.
I want to mark the correspondence. I did not mark one piece of paper for the record. This is the correspondence from GSA Architects dated August 29th, 2025. And that will be 823.
Got it.
Is this yours or mine?
Looks like you've done this before.
I'm ready.
Sir, Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
My name is William Stimmel, S-T-I-M-M-E-L. My professional address is P.O. Box 280, Rutherford, New Jersey. I am the principal of Stimmel Engineering.
Would you provide the board with your educational background and your professional qualifications?
I'm a graduate of NJIT with a degree in civil engineering. I've been employed for the past 25 years in the state of New Jersey as an engineer and planner. Here primarily, I think, to speak about planning, but I'll also put my engineering qualifications on. I've been a licensed engineer since 2004, a licensed planner since 2010. Both of my licenses are current in the state of New Jersey, and I've been accepted in front of many municipal boards, including the planning and zoning boards in Montclair.
Okay. Chairman, well, for him, solely as a professional planner, unless questioning goes into engineering issues, which I'm not intending to.
Does he want to be qualified as an engineer?
Well, he can be qualified, but I'm not sure he's prepared to discuss the engineering plans in detail that were prepared by Petrie Engineering. But just qualify him as a professional planner.
Okay. We accept him.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Stimmel, do you want to discuss, you've reviewed the planning aspects of this application, in particular the variances and other relief that's being sought, correct?
I have.
Okay. Would you discuss the application, I guess, beginning with the discussion of the existing conditions and proposed conditions?
Sure. Just very briefly, the existing conditions on the subject property are that we have a rectangular lot with an area of 3,400 roughly square feet. It's approximately 30 by 113. It had previously been developed with a church, which has since been demolished. The proposed conditions are that the applicant intends to clear the property and construct a new 4-story apartment building. The building will provide 3 two-bedroom dwelling units. Access will be via one curb cut leading beneath the building to a paved parking area at the rear of the lot. In addition to the building and the driveway and parking areas, there will be landscaping at the rear around the parking area, drainage improvements subject to review by the board engineer, and lighting improvements, again, subject to the review of the board engineer. The applicant has already agreed to some modifications to the lighting design and would stipulate that those would be made on the record. In terms of the zoning ordinance for the subject property, the site is located in the Elm Street New and Mission area, which is a redevelopment area. It was adopted in September of 2006. Within the redevelopment area, we are in the Bloomfield Avenue mixed-use subzone, which allows for the following land uses. Restaurants, and I apologize, it's a lengthy list, but I think it's important to get on the record. Restaurants and eating and drinking establishments, commercial, recreation, convenience, specialty, and service retail, banks, nonprofit institutional uses, educational play centers, apartments, education or quasi-educational establishments, business and professional offices, government offices, senior housing, bars and taverns, parking decks, assisted living, charitable institutions except hospitals, schools, and churches. Not included in the list of permitted uses, and I think this came up in some of the public comment at a prior meeting, are single-family and two-family dwellings. So they were permitted under the previous R2 zone. They are not permitted in the redevelopment zone. However, the proposed apartment is a permitted use in the redevelopment zone. Right now, the subject property is vacant, as are the 3 adjoining lots to the south. The lot to the north of the site along Hartley Street is occupied by a health club. Mr. Robertson had spoken a little bit about the conceptual plans that are prepared or are being prepared for that property at the prior meeting and a little bit tonight as well. In terms of the D variances, the use, the intensity of the use, again, the apartment use is permitted in the zone. The density of the zone is permitted to be up to 55 dwelling units per acre, which would be 4 and a fraction with a property of this size. We're proposing 3 units, so the density is 38.4 dwelling units, well below the 55 that is permitted. We could add 1 unit without requiring a density variance. The height, The zone allows for a height of 67 feet or 6 stories. The previous plans had shown a height of 48.5 feet. That's been reduced by 2 due to the reduction of the parapet. The internal structure of the building, the heights of the various floors and ceilings will remain the same. So we comply with the height in feet. We're actually more than 20 feet under the height requirement, and we comply with the height in stories as well with a 4-foot building. So there are no D variants associated, which is why we're in front of the planning board tonight. In terms of the C variances, we are asking for very limited relief. We comply with the parking, we comply with the height, we comply with the front, side, and rear setbacks. Per the latest planner's letter, we have a variance for the minimum lot width where 80 feet is required, 30 feet is existing and proposed, and for the minimum lot size where 15,000 square feet is required, 3,399 square feet are existing and proposed. These are existing nonconformities which are in no way impacted by the proposed development. The adjoining properties to the left and to the right of us on Hartley Street are both nonconforming. There's been an indication at least that the property to the right of us, closer to Bloomfield Avenue, is being considered for development under existing conditions. Mr. Trembulac and our client, Mr. DeSanti, had spoken at an earlier meeting about reaching out to adjoining landowners about purchasing the properties, and they were unable to acquire those lots. So the lot width, the lot size, those are existing conditions which our applicant has no ability to rectify. In terms of the positive criteria for the requested variance relief, there are 2 channels that the applicant can follow. The first is the C1 variance for a hardship, where in cases of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property, the variance could be granted, or the flexible C, which is the argument that the benefits in granting the variance outweigh any detriments and that the purposes of zoning have been advanced. I think there's a clear hardship aspect to these 2 variances that we're asking for, given the size of the property. We have an existing condition, obviously, which is not being impacted. The proposed development is substantially in compliance with the requirements of the zone. There's no additional variances directly related to the lot size, so there's no variances with the coverage or with the setbacks. There's no variances created by the lot width, which would be chiefly the side yard setbacks. So we believe that that positive criteria has been satisfied. In terms of the flexible C, the purposes of zoning, I found 3 purposes of zoning that are advanced by this application. The first is purpose A, which speaks to the health, safety, morals, and general welfare. The municipality has indicated going back to 2006 that they want to see new development in this area by adopting that redevelopment plan. We are redeveloping a site in a redevelopment zone for a permitted use. Purpose E, which is to promote the establishment of appropriate population densities. The proposed development, again, complies with the density requirement for the zone. We're actually below it. We could provide 1 more unit without a density variance. And then finally, purpose I, to promote a desirable visual environment. The applicant has put forth a plan which they believe complies with the design standards for the redevelopment zone. They made additional modifications to the plan based on comments from the board at prior meetings. So I believe that the C2 criteria has been satisfied as well. With any C variance, the applicant must demonstrate the negative criteria as well, that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. Based on my review of the site, the materials submitted, and the testimony provided, I see no substantial detriment or substantial impairment. The relief requested is relatively minor in nature. The application is as free of variances as it could be. The municipality has acknowledged for 20 years that this area could use redevelopment, but there has been little or no redevelopment along Hartley Street. Currently got a vacant lot. It's a permitted use in the zone, and it moves the property forward in a way which is largely in compliance with the requirements of the redevelopment zone. There are 2 design waivers associated with the application. The first is the minimum driveway width, where 12 feet is required, 10 feet is proposed, and again, that 10 feet is just for a very limited portion of the driveway. The majority of the driveway in that tunnel area underneath the building meets the 12-foot requirement. Whether the driveway is 10 feet or 12 feet wide, it's certainly more than wide enough for a single vehicle to pass through, not wide enough for two vehicles to pass in opposite directions, so there would be little gain to be had by eliminating that minor waiver from the design standards. There's also a design waiver for the minimum landscaping. The redevelopment plan states that on non-residential, multifamily, and single-family attached lots, a minimum of 20% of the site not occupied by buildings shall be landscaped. So the requirement is for 280 square feet. That would be 20% of the area that's not underneath the building. We are proposing 123 square feet, which is about 8.8%. The deficiency is 157 square feet, which is less than the area of a standard parking space, if you can visualize that. The landscaping and the areas that are not underneath the building are located at the rear of the property. It's essentially invisible to the public, and that coverage would be mitigated by the installation of drainage improvements. So for all those reasons, I believe the applicant has shown there's sufficient justification to grant the 2C variances and 2 design waivers associated with the application. I'd be happy to try and address any questions or comments the board might have.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, you went through a lot of stuff. Can you just tell me what are the 2C variances that we're looking for? I know it's in here and I should know, but I don't.
Sure. The 2C variances are for lot size.
The lot size, the square footage of the whole lot?
15,000 square feet is required, 3399 is existing and proposed.
Okay.
And lot width, 80 feet is required, 30 feet is
Okay.
existing and proposed.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something. So you stated when it came to density that you could have provided 4.1 units and 6 stories, right? But as our previous chair used to, I'm going to brutalize it, I'm going to paraphrase. You can build it if you can park it, right?
Yep.
So I find it difficult to imagine that you could have actually added an additional unit. And in addition, if you were to go to 6 stories, you'd have to add that second stairwell, right, and egress, which would impact the design. So
Correct.
I think currently the design is to maximum capacity if I'm looking at those factors. Would that be accurate?
I'm not an architect. I think you could probably come up with a way to make a 6-story building on the site where you've got 2, what I'm going to call Manhattan duplexes, 2-story dwelling units.
With that additional stairwell for egress, right?
Certainly.
So
There's also the possibility of providing parking through a shared parking arrangement, which the redevelopment plan does allow, but wasn't something the client really looked into.
But I just want to clarify.
I understand what you're saying.
I understand, that as a developer, you want to build what you're allowed to build. I'm not saying that's a positive or negative, but I think to suggest that we are getting anything back in terms of stories or additional apartments, I think is a little bit disingenuous. And I think that, this probably is the max that could be fit on this lot.
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
but that is what the height and density standards are.
Right, if you can park it, right? Always if you can park it, and
Correct.
And I don't find it realistic, given the tight turning plan that we see, that it would be realistic to be able to park an additional the additional unit that you're talking about.
There is the opportunity to provide off-site parking through a shared parking arrangement. The redevelopment plan does allow that. It wasn't something our client really investigated, but it would address that parking issue that you proposed.
Okay, but
if
it's
you
not
kept the
addressed in
parking
this
on site-
plan. But, okay, fair enough. I also want to push back on the point that it is a vacant lot, and, that is being used as, building on the site is being used as positive criteria. There was a church there that was demoed, which could have potentially been adaptively reused. So I don't know if I'm necessarily comfortable with the idea that that was demoed and now it's being used, now that it's vacant, being used as a reason for the positive factors of the variance. So I would push back on that as well. And I think I may have a couple more questions, but I want to know if anybody else on the board has any other things that they want, anything else they want to address in the interim.
Counselor.
I guess related to Mr. Graham's point, how far away are you from a railroad station?
Pardon me?
How far away are you from the railroad station? It's like 2 or 3 blocks.
Yeah, not far.
Yeah,
Less
so
than
I
a quarter
guess
mile, certainly.
you probably would anticipate that there might be people who won't have cars in that building. Right? Because you know.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with that.
Yeah, okay, thank
But
you.
I often do calculation of the expected parking demand based on census data for applications where we have a parking variance. Since we didn't have a parking variance, I didn't do it, but that's a very good point.
Other questions from the board?
I have a question. I'm not quite sure how it fits, but with the terraces that are at the sides of the building, they're right up against walls, is that not correct? When the property is next door is developed with 0 side yard.
Yes, if the property next door is developed and built up to the property line and extends to the height of the terraces, they would be right up against that brick or whatever material wall.
So that right. It's just a step outside, I guess. You could paint a picture on the wall to make it look as
I'm sure you heard at the prior meetings, there was some back and forth about whether the terraces were better in the event that the building next door doesn't get built, or until the building next door gets built, or should it just be closed in and be additional closet space? And I got the sense that the client was fairly amenable rather to whichever direction the board wanted to take it. But in my mind, I think the terrace is a benefit as long as they can use it.
Other questions from the board? No other questions from the board?
I guess, I'm not sure if you're the appropriate person to ask this, but, you know, I believe the plan calls for the residents to haul the trash from the trash room. I believe it calls for them to handle the landscaping. Is that typical for a building of this size? I mean, I've lived in condos before, and I've never had to haul I lived in smaller ones where we were responsible for our own trash on the street, but is that common for tenants to be responsible for the refuse room and
The
cleaning it
client
up?
would probably be better able to address that. I don't recall the tenants being responsible for landscaping in the prior testimony, but I could have missed it. There was a lot of prior testimony. The landlord has indicated he's responsible.
You'll be responsible for landscaping. Okay, because I thought I had heard in previous testimony that was up to the residents, to the tenants. Are the tenants responsible for the trash removal, though, from the refuse room? And they are.
Yes.
Is that common in buildings of this type?
Newer buildings, possibly not. Older buildings, certainly.
Okay.
Any other question from the board?
I like those who do.
I think that's all I have, Chairman.
Okay. Are there any members of the public that wish to ask this witness questions about his testimony tonight? Mr. Stimmel, I don't know if you want the handheld mic or if you want to sit next to Mr. Trembulac, but either way, we're going to have to make sure that we get your voice with a microphone.
Sarah Avery, 25 Irving Street. So, Mr. Stimmel, we need to correct the record here because you said that this redevelopment plan was adopted in September 2006, and that's not correct. It was adopted in September 2007. The draft was evidently published in September 2006. So, this issue of the density, you said that the C variances are very limited, and the way I'm interpreting that term, very limited, is that
You could ask him what he meant by that.
Yeah, well, what do you mean by that? Very limited.
Well, there are only 2 C variances associated with the application, and they happen to be 2 C variances that our client can't address. If it was a variance for front yard setback, let's say, and we needed 10 feet and we had 5 feet, you could say, okay, we'll move the building 5 feet back, but that's not the case. We don't have the opportunity to address those C variances, the lot size and the lot width.
Mm-hmm. So the issue is that
Question, and this is a question, right? Mr.
yes,
Stimmel?
yes, because he's saying you can't address it, and that makes it very limited.
And you can ask him a question about that.
Right. I just want to walk through my thoughts to get to the question. So this is a
You can
third.
just try and
Yes,
get through
yes.
those quickly.
I don't have a lot here, so I won't take up too much time. The redevelopment plan requires a lot that's 80 foot wide. This is a 30 foot wide lot, which is 62% less. So, to your way of thinking, is that very limited or minor? You also said it was minor. So do you think that requesting relief for 62%, do you think that's very limited or minor?
I think the 62% number sounds bad, but you have to take it in the context that we've come up with a building on the property that's developable and functional. So the issues you might have with the lot size and the lot width, the building functions or would function if it was approved and constructed.
All right, similarly, 3,400 square feet versus 15,000 square feet, that's a 77%. And you also said that purposes have been met, but if you read the redevelopment plan, there are 6 goals, right? Increase parking capacity. We haven't done that. Rehabilitate deteriorated.
You're going to ask him a question about whether he's done that or not.
So how have you met these goals? There are 6 goals. How has this plan, how has it addressed the 6 goals of this redevelopment plan?
Well, the one we were focusing on was the rehabilitate deteriorated and underutilized properties, and Mr. Graham did bring up the point that there was a building on the property, and I think you or one of the other members of the public had indicated that the redevelopment plan recommended that that church be maintained on the property when it was adopted in 2007, let's say. Now, quite a long time ago, obviously.
Not really.
The building was gone by the time I became involved in the project, but the testimony from the client was that the building itself was in poor shape. The applicant went through all the proper channels to get the demolition permit, demolish the building, and have the material removed from the property. So, as it stands now, we are rehabilitating an underutilized property. In terms of increasing the parking capacity, had a church on the site which would have some parking demand. So you were at a negative based on the existing condition. You've got the proposed apartment building where we meet the parking requirements. So we're increasing the parking capacity on the site and eliminating the existing deficiency associated with the church and the fact that it didn't provide any parking.
So you just said sort of a double negative there. You're claiming that you've increased parking capacity, but you haven't increased parking capacity. You've only created parking for new residents. So it's a zero. There is no increase in parking capacity.
Well, the site is at a negative with the church there, if you will.
The church isn't there. The church isn't there. The church is gone. The church is gone. right? Even though this
So
redevelopment
for
plan.
questions, right, I understand the point, and I think he's answered to the best of his ability the
Right.
question.
So, I mean, all I can say is, you use language. It sounds to me that you use language to make it sound like what you're doing is conforming when it's not, right?
Well,
Because
his testimony is where it conforms and where it doesn't, and why this applicant is seeking a variance and a
Right.
waiver.
So how can you say that you could have another apartment there when the lot does not have sufficient space to provide parking?
Well, Mr. Graham and I already discussed this. The redevelopment plan does allow for the utilization of off-site parking, which was not something our client investigated, but that argument was more in terms of a comment related to the density. The density would permit the construction of another apartment on the property without the D variance, which is true.
All right, so I have one more question. If I can just get to the right page. All right. Right. I brought this up at the last meeting. That 80-foot wide is required. So tell me, how can you tell me that it's optional, right? Because if you're saying we have a 30-foot wide lot and the plan requires an 80-foot wide lot, how can you say that required is optional?
We're not saying it's optional, we're saying that's what the requirement is, and we're providing the legal proofs for why we believe the applicant should be granted the variance or waiver relief. The applicant has a right to apply for a variance, same as with any land use application.
Well, there's other options, which I'll bring up at the end. Thank you.
Other questions for this witness? I see no more. Mr. Trembulac, do you have anyone else?
No, Mr. Chairman. I don't intend to call any additional witnesses. I would just note, the discussion about drainage. I mean, again, our plans were prepared by Petrie Engineering for grading and drainage, reviewed by the board engineer who was satisfied with what had been designed. We haven't presented testimony from Mr. Petrie. If the board feels we need to address the issues that were raised by Mr. Grayson, I guess it was, we can bring him back. I'd rather not. I'd rather finish this tonight. I don't think it's necessary because at the end of the day, if the application is approved, we're going to have to go through review by the engineer, just like we're going to have to go through a review by the building department and fire safety and building code issues and make sure we satisfy all of those requirements as well as the engineer's requirements. And if we don't, we're going to have to revise the plans to meet their requirements or come back with another plan if necessary. But we're confident we can address any code requirements or engineering requirements. And we've agreed to, by the way, I just noted early on, I think we noted, I just want to reiterate it, that we stipulated that we will comply with all of Mr. Hernandez's comments and recommendations in his report.
And so if
I would have questions for Petrie, but I don't want to bring them back either. If Norberto can answer them, that's a shortcut. So would you mind if I asked Norberto questions about the engineering plan?
Let me just ask one question of Mr. Trumbullack based on what he said, and then
Okay.
I'll
All right.
let you. So if after you apply for your building permits and engineering review said, we need a larger catch basin, for engineering reasons, would that be something that you would be willing to install?
Probably, if it would be a requirement to proceed with the project.
I think it would be a requirement. I
Right.
I would presume that if Mr. Hernandez, as the township engineer, were to look at that and say, well, based on the flows that are coming into this catch basin, based on good engineering practice, and perhaps some of the things that the resident is going to send over to Mr. Hernandez about good engineering practice, would that be something that you'd be willing to install, even though knowing it's township property, but if it's needed for this development based on engineering needs, would you be willing to do that? And
Before you
yeah.
answer that question,
under oath.
you recognize you
Yes.
remain under
Yes.
oath.
Mr. DeSanti would like to respond to that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Petrie Engineering, they actually designed a very comprehensive water detention system. It's actually very sophisticated for a lot this size. I'm sure Mr. Hernandez has seen it. We've gone through an extensive emails back and forth creating this big detention system. I believe it's a 6-inch line that we're going to be going to the catch basin.
I believe it's 8-inch.
8-inch, yeah, it's even larger. But yeah, as you can, from what I've seen, I've never seen something this large into such a small space. So I'm pretty sure that everybody's going to be pretty happy, and also Mr. Grayson, I'm sure would be happy if he saw this system we are installing.
Mr.
Chairman,
Hernandez.
Yeah, I can make just a couple points before.
Yeah,
Mr.
so
Nawali.
Norberto wrote a memo July 16th, negative letterhead. You essentially approved the retention plan, right? Gradient, drainage, utilities, additional information. We take no exception to this design methodology and find it acceptable. That's the end of your 5.1 paragraph.
Correct.
So you basically are okay with it.
Yes, so as proposed, the stormwater system complies
Okay.
with the stormwater management
So
requirements.
here's my question. So you're putting it all, you're taking it into an 8-inch PVC pipe, and then you're sending it 156 feet in the public right-of-way down to Bloomfield Avenue. Did you think about anticipating if other sites that get developed could also feed into that pipe? Because, you're putting this kind of residential, this PVC pipe is kind of a residential quality pipe in the public right-of-way, down the sidewalk. So I thought originally that maybe it would just come out of the front of the building and dump into a catch basin right there. So there are other properties that could have site drainage issues as well. They probably wouldn't be able to pipe into this. They'd have to create another pipe. So that seems like an awkward way to design public utilities to me.
Well, this wouldn't be necessarily public infrastructure.
But it's going through the
This is
public right-of-way.
services. Correct.
Yeah.
Which
So
isn't necessarily
Suppose there's
uncommon.
3 buildings, you're going to have 3
Yeah.
separate pipes for 3 buildings to go to that catch basin?
Well, that's something that would have to be evaluated at the time of application. If there's an opportunity to tie into this line, or perhaps upsize it at the point of connection downstream, that's something that future applicant would need to consider as part of their application. But I would just note that, correct, there is an 8-inch line that runs out in the street. However, before that, the immediate point of relief is only 2.5 inches wide. So before it gets to an 8-inch capacity,
Oh,
it's really going to bleed out of a 2.5-inch hole.
I thought I saw.
And then
Unless it-
eventually,
unless it overflows,
in the
right?
event of an overflow, then it'll overtop. But most storms would likely flow through that 2.5-inch hole. So it's half the size of your typical roof leader drain.
I didn't see that. I saw 8, I'm sorry, because I saw the.
No, it is
I think it's an
8-inch
8-inch
within the
pipe.
public right-of-way.
What?
It
No,
is
but coming out of the building is only 2? I thought I saw 8 coming out of the
at the
building.
basin.
I think it's like a 2.5-inch orifice.
It's an
Oh,
orifice
okay,
at
so
the
it limits
structure.
it.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so,
they're
alright.
building an outlet, what's called an outlet control structure.
And then,
So-
is there some sort of easement that's created for this thing, or does it just sit there, or what? Because I,
There wouldn't be an easement. It's within the public right-of-way on their property, so they
so
would simply be
the township
responsible for their.
would essentially own that PVC pipe?
No, it's their private drain line.
Over a public
It's-
right-of-way that they would,
Correct.
wouldn't
And
there,
it's not-
normally
it's
you would
not-
have an easement, I think.
It's not something that's necessarily, I wouldn't say it's common, but it's been done. It's been done before for other applications and other projects where perhaps there's not a catch basin right in front of their property, but within arm's reach, and they've been permitted to tap
How does
into
one
that.
document the ownership and responsibility for that in the public right-of-way if there's no easement?
They would be required to apply for a permit prior to installing that, and that
No,
would be on
but
record.
10 years down the road, what, if there's a clog, is it the town just, I mean, who's responsible? And who's,
The property owner. It
But
would only service
what-
their, it
what-
would only service their.
my
their-
question is,
their-
what
their
document
property.
persists if someone who, if no one who was here is
What I would-
looking at this,
what I
how
would
would they know
recommend-
that?
What I would recommend, if there's a concern of that, include that as a condition of approval, that,
What would be the condition?
that the applicant is responsible for maintenance and responsibility of that 8-inch drainage pipe within the public right-of-way, just to formalize it.
I've just never seen anything like this, I guess a deed restriction or something. I guess I've seen discharges to public utilities directly in front of the building, where it's very clear, just like your water line, your sewer, everything goes out to a public. This is 150 feet down the street in front of other buildings. I've just never seen that before, and it seems more like we're creating a,
Can I
just,
ask you a question, Tony? So, you know,
I don't want to get too hung up on this.
No, but
I just-
I'm, what you're suggesting is like they are putting a pipe in from their building all the way down to Bloomfield Avenue. And you're suggesting, I'm thinking, in the future, there may be other buildings that would be built that should also connect to such a pipe.
Otherwise, they'd have to build-
Yeah, they'd build their own. So why don't we just, at this point, it strikes me it would be the town's responsibility to put in a pipe that would connect to other houses as they're built or other properties. But that's not something that's generally
Yeah,
part of this kind of application. But
Yeah.
from a common sense point of view, that seems to be kind of the best thing that could be done at this point, rather than requiring them to put in their own pipe, tear up the street, or whatever they have to do. And then the next building that gets built, what happens, and you're even looking at another building next door. What happens when do they have to then build another pipe? And what, I don't get it, I mean, but I'm not questioning you, I think you know what you're saying.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just trying to
it's-
visualize what Tony's talking about.
It's a fair point. I would just note that this is a rather short block, and everything on that street flows naturally down towards Bloomfield Avenue. And from my recollection and just awareness of the area, there's generally not been an issue as far as getting the water off the street into the catch basin at that corner. So there hasn't been a need. Whether or not the town should construct infrastructure for development that hasn't occurred yet, that's a question that's obviously, it's a reasonable question, but one for.
Question not for
debate.
this board, though.
But not for this board at
Yeah.
this time. But it's not uncommon that as applicants come to boards for approval, if it's servicing and directly servicing their property, they would be responsible for construction of that infrastructure. That's not an uncommon, situation.
Mr. Chair, we have no problem with the condition that Mr. Hernandez suggested, that however the board wants to memorialize it, but we accept the obligation to construct, maintain, and repair that line.
And one other note, because it was discussed by the gentleman from the public, as far as the capacity of that catch basin, there's many factors that go into that. However, I think the one factor relevant to this application is that as it stands today, everything on that property, in one way, form, or another, makes its way down to that catch basin today. So, in essence, the applicant is not increasing the demand of that catch basin. If anything, he's reducing that demand by providing the underground detention system. So there's a level of increased resiliency with that system. So
Is that what they're required to do, is to?
it's what they're required to do at this point based on the township's stormwater control ordinance. So they are required to provide 541 cubic feet of storage, and they're providing 565 cubic feet of storage. So they're meeting the requirement, a minor, exceedance, but within reason, and they're complying with the township.
Right, they're required
requirements.
to manage or detain their stormwater on site and not
Correct.
create additional runoff
Correct.
than was previously there,
Correct.
on the property.
So
Is that
currently,
correct?
there's no drainage on the property. Everything sheet flows over land towards Hartley Street, and then ultimately down Hartley Street towards the catch basin on Bloomfield Avenue, uncontrolled today. So they're providing a new infrastructure that will improve that drainage situation, ultimately.
Roberto, there's a document from Petrie. Document from Petrie, it's SP1. It's SP1 and SP2, I guess. It's the drainage system, so I don't want to belabor this, but the big detention basins in the back, there's an 18-inch PVC pipe that goes into invert outlet. I see all 8 inches from the 18 all the way through to the street.
Correct.
I don't see a 2.
So if you turn to the next sheet, SP-2,
Okay.
what you see there, that 18-inch pipe going into, which then outlets to an 8-inch, that's the outlet control structure. So there's a detail towards the bottom of the page. It's entitled Outlet Structure Number 2-3 Detail. And in that detail, you'll see the 18-inch PVC in at invert 240-25. And then there's a concrete wall inside that chamber. And at the bottom, there's a 2.5-inch opening.
Thank you. I see it. Thank you.
Could I return to the issue of the driveway? And my understanding is...
Ms. Willis, if I could just make sure, Mr. Ianwali, did that answer your
Yeah, I see
questions?
it
Do you
now,
feel
yeah.
the need to have Petrie Engineering, or I'll ask this of anybody of the board, does anybody feel the need to have Petrie Engineering appear before us? Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Willis?
Thank you. I wanted to return to the driveway. You say that there's a short part of the driveway at the entrance that at the moment could not comply with the 12-foot width. What would it take to make it comply? Is it at all possible to do something that could make that comply?
It's a question for the architect, I believe.
So what we could do is take a look at the revisions committee and show a plan of what that would look like, because it would have impacts to the elevation. We could, instead of having a 10-foot wide garage door, we could do a 12-foot wide garage door and change the interior lobby, but we can't commit to saying we would do that, because we got to look at a lot of other things.
Well, my concern is that a building lasts quite a long time, and the vehicles and whatever change. And if you can't get in the entrance because it's narrow, that's a very significant part of the part.
Well, the garage
problem.
door is wider than a parking space.
I know
so-
that, but could you open the door if you had to
If you
and
stopped,
get
if you
out?
stopped right at the garage door, you could still open the door, just like you could at a parking space.
If it would be possible, it would, to me, make sense to comply with it, because it's a walled space. If it were an open with, rear view mirrors and whatever, if it could be complied with, I think it would be very helpful. If it were an open space, I wouldn't be as concerned as it is with a walled space. Thank you.
We'll look at that, but it requires a whole review of the entire first floor and changes that might be required, so it's not something we could commit to at this time.
1.5 feet, is it, you said?
No, yeah.
About 1.5 feet,
Foot
he
and a
needs to do it.
10.25, 10 and a quarter, not and a half.
Can we commit to that then?
Yeah, it's 10.25 is what I see on the plans for the opening.
How long is it, 10? How many feet is the 10.25? Does it quickly
I
expand?
testified that it looked to me like about 7 feet. There's no
Oh,
dimensions.
7 feet,
Yeah, it's
okay.
just from
Yeah, gotcha.
the front of the face of the building to we set back the garage door at the request of the DRC, actually. I think we may have had the garage door up front, and then we wouldn't even have this. Well, we still would for the garage door. It still would be a variance request, or a waiver request for that, because we have a garage door.
So I think we answered your question, Mr. Trumbulack. We do not need Mr. Petrie to come
Yes, I think
back.
so. That's the answer I was hoping for, yes.
And so you have no other witnesses?
No other witnesses. That concludes our presentation.
Okay. So now would be the time for comments from the public. How many folks in the public, if you'd raise your hand just so I can get a general idea of how many people expect to have comments? Okay, 3. Let's take a quick 10-minute break, and then we'll get to public comment. Okay?
It's going to have to take some variance. The only question is... It's just the lot size. Yeah, right. The lot is narrow, so anything they do there is going to...
Janice, are we back on?
100%. The question is, how
Okay.
can you live with this particular variance?
All right, welcome back, everyone.
And I couldn't live with it until they redid the plan. You notice they put the gates and windows for that.
Why not? Okay, so now we are at the point where we'll have the public, whoever is interested, you can make comments about the 10 Hartley application, positive or negative. Just come on up to the lectern. We're going to limit folks to about 3 minutes. So if you can be efficient with those comments, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Ariel Eckstedt. Do I have to say my address? No.
If you can,
Okay.
Sure. And if not, it's
316
okay.
Park Street. Great.
I'm sorry, what was your last name, ma'am?
Eckstedt, E-C-K-S-T-U-T. First name Ariel.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do you reside in Montclair?
I do.
Thank you.
Yeah. So one of the main goals of the redevelopment plan is to increase affordable housing. And we had the recent survey about affordable housing where I think 76% of responders said they agree. 66 said they agree that Montclair needs more affordable housing? Okay, and 62% said they strongly agree? Okay, so a large portion of Montclair. The majority. So not only do we have a redevelopment agreement with a top goal of affordable housing, but we also have current residents crying out for affordable housing. And this project would eliminate the ability to require any affordable housing at this site because there are only 3 units. The lot size here is less than half of what is specified in the redevelopment plan and requires a variance, more than one, actually. And changes to redevelopment agreements are problematic at any time because it gives the property owner a benefit that others are not receiving. And like a spot zone, it would change the value of the plot of land without changing the value of the others around it. And any changes would require a rationale that benefits the public at large. I don't see a public benefit here, particularly to fellow residents in the 4th Ward. If you make these kinds of variances, what's to stop the property owners on either side or anywhere else in the zone from avoiding the 5-unit affordable housing requirement? I also just have a question from something that came up. Which body approves the demolition of the church? Is it this body? No.
No.
Okay. Because it actually is unfair to the applicant to allow the demolition and then have a property that doesn't adhere to the redevelopment plan, but that's a whole other thing. So I also just want to speak to the design of the building and the context, or really the lack thereof of context. This project may not be in a designated historic district, but it is historic as stated in the redevelopment agreement. This site is in a historic Black neighborhood where many families have lived for multiple generations. And I'm not an architect, but my father is. He was the head of the urban design department at Columbia. He designed the master plan for Battery Park City and hundreds of other projects. And the very first thing he does when taking on a new project is to look at the existing neighborhood. And in the testimony last time, it was said that there are not a lot of buildings on the block, but that is a very limited idea of what a neighborhood is, just the block. And I just don't find any context in this design. There's no nod to what's around. And while I am very happy that there's not brick veneer being used, that's great. The brick is really the only nod to the neighborhood and to Montclair. So the bottom line here is that changes like this one establish precedent that often has a domino effect that will continue a pattern of harm to the 4th Ward and to our town at large. Thank you.
Thank you.
Should I sit down? Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Hello again, Jeffrey Grayson, Willowdale Avenue in Montclair. Since it's public comment, I'm going to finish some of my catch basin information that I have that won't be in the form of a question.
No, that's fine. Now's the time. You could basically say anything you want about the application.
Okay.
Within reason, of course.
Okay, I understand. There are three types of basins. Type 1 is designed for lower volumes of water with small pipes generally used for residential applications. Type 2 are designed with more substantial sized pipes and a maximum depth of 15 feet and is better suited for commercial applications. Type 3 can handle much larger volumes of water with very large pipes and is applicable for use in industrial applications where effective water management is crucial. Regular visual inspections after major storms and seasonal changes are essential because leaves, debris, sediment, and standing water left unattended can lead to vermin, mosquitoes, bacteria, foul smell, and lead to clogging of the pipes. In a worst-case scenario, this could lead to the erosion of the mortar and concrete that secures the basin, causing it to shift or sink, potentially leading to a sinkhole under the property. And that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Mariah Askew, Willowdale Avenue. And last time that we spoke, it was very clear to me that I was not going to ask any questions this time because I know that they do not care about the gentrification issue. It was made very clear to me. When I asked about the gentrification, they claimed to not know what it was, even though it's on page 25 and 26 of the redevelopment plan. They also claimed that they did not know about the historical character or context, even though it's on page 15 and 16 of the redevelopment plan. Also, last time, Mr. DeSantis spoke about living in Patterson and that he was from the ghetto and that he believed in the American dream. But just like Montclair deals with houselessness, so does Patterson. In Montclair, it went from 62 houseless people in 2023 to 93 in 2024 and 115 by 2025. In Patterson, there was a 66% increase in homelessness. So there was 411 people and 131 of those people had substance abuse disorders. So obviously there's two different places that, could be supported. They could stay supporting people in Patterson, but they're not choosing to do that. They're choosing to come here. When we need more affordable housing. We need to deal with the houselessness issue. We need to protect the Black and brown people in downtown and South End Montclair. And they don't care about that. And that was made very clear to me last time. But I'm expecting y'all to care about this. I don't want to have to come up here every week and ask. I don't want to. I'm doing it because my mother can't because she works 3 jobs. That's why I'm here every week. And I grew up here, and I want to say that I'm proud to be here, but with everything that's been going on, I cannot say that I'm proud to live in a town that excuses colonial behavior. I am not proud of this town right now, and I know you can do more. I know it, and I've seen you push for things that you can do of each individual person of what you've been able to do. So I need you to take this seriously. I'm going to be here every single meeting pushing for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again, Sarah Avery. I live on Irving Street, which is in the 4th Ward of Montclair. I want to talk about the goals of this redevelopment plan. Number one was to increase parking capacity, to rehabilitate deteriorated and underutilized properties, to provide affordable housing. In fact, affordable housing is mentioned over 27 times in this document. Parking, if you do a search of parking in this document, it appears 307 times. So I have to believe that when this plan was drafted, those were the things that the drafters were concerned about. Increasing parking capacity, rehabilitate deteriorated properties, create affordable housing, art and public spaces, stimulate private investment, attract quality businesses. This application does nothing to advance any of these goals. On top of that, it bifurcates the block so that you can never do anything to achieve the goal of this plan, and that's why the lot width is required to be 80-foot wide, and that's why the lot size is required to be 15,000 square feet in order to achieve these goals. I also want to address Mr. DeSantis' comment that he grew up in Paterson, the ghetto. I was born in Paterson, New Jersey, and I know I was not born in the ghetto. Furthermore, I have been doing volunteer work in Paterson for at least the past decade. I'm the current treasurer for Passaic County Habitat for Humanity. During the pandemic, I drove to Paterson every Friday the summer of 2020 and went to Kumac and filled up my car with food, and I drove all over Paterson delivering food, having difficulty finding some of the locations, engaging with people on the street who all helped me unreservedly. And I never felt unsafe. So I think that being a Montclair resident for over 38 years, having come here because of the reputation of this community, the democratic values, the interest in the common good, that's why I moved here. And this redevelopment plan, I do believe, was created with the primary objective of the common good. And this application does nothing to advance those objectives. A better idea would be for the town to use eminent domain, combine 8 and 10 Hartley. Hopefully, it would be almost 80-foot wide. And then you could build a real building with affordable housing and adequate parking and meet the goals of the redevelopment plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, Dave Herron. I heard testimony tonight, and what I heard gentlemen say, we're not required to offer affordable housing in this plan. I heard testimony tonight, we don't have to give 2 separate entrances of egress. I get it. But just because you're not required doesn't mean you shouldn't give it. Just because affordable housing isn't a requirement, that doesn't mean we should drop the ball and say we don't have to give it, so we're not going to give it. I've been in this town 55 years. That's not the Montclair I know. Just because it's under the threshold, we're saying, oh, we don't have to give it, so we're not going to give it. We are we were progressive town than that. This town, along with others, have complaints out there from the Fair Housing Center because this town submitted a plan that's missing documentation. Folks, we're getting ready to get sued because the plan was submitted that did not meet the requirements. That was, what's with people when you think we don't have to adhere to requirements anymore, and if the requirements are something that's below where we are, we could ignore it. We can say, that's not that important. Folks, all I'm saying is, just because we don't have to, doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make public comment?
Hi, my name is Bonnie Fogel. I live on Forest Street. I live in a building that's a fourth-story walk-up, and I have to tell you, a lot of people are really not happy on the fourth floor, and just about everybody who's there is very young and comes from a much more expensive area, so it seems like a bargain for them. So I'm part of me is being cynical and snotty and laughing about this, somebody actually going out and building a four-story walk-up now. I certainly couldn't live there. I certainly couldn't get out of a burning apartment with any kind of ladder. So, and there are people right here who couldn't either. But, I'm listening the last couple of times I've come here, and particularly tonight, the thought I keep having is that the way things are operating with testimony that's given, with attorneys, even with responses and questionings, I keep thinking of AI. And I keep thinking that everybody is operating as if they're AI, because I don't see people having a concern about, is this good for Montclair? Who does this serve? Or does it fit a certain checklist? I'm not fighting the law. You bend the law enough with, considering even a 30-foot wide lot. But I'm just amazed that the people that I've gotten to know here that I consider in my circle are people who want to do what's good for Montclair and for people who are living here and people who have the same kind of values and not look for any kind of opportunity to make a buck and allow people who will settle for something like this because they're paying $5,600, in Brooklyn, so this is going to be better. Because I don't see anything about this building for me or for my children that's desirable. And that's just the way I feel about it. I thought the idea, very frankly, about combining two lots and building a decent building is just brilliant and what would support Montclair and be good for Montclair. So, enough AI.
Thank you. Any other comments about this application? I see none.
Okay. All right. First of all, thanks to all the board members for the time you've spent in listening to the application over the course of 3 meetings now. Just to reiterate, the relief that's being sought here, site plan approval, 2 variances, 2 design waivers. That's it. And I'll come back to the waivers and the variances in a few minutes. I'd first like to address some of the issues and concerns that have been raised by members of the public tonight and also at the last meeting in the course of examining our witnesses. We've heard a lot of comments and concerns from the public regarding gentrification in our community and the resulting effect that has in displacement of lower income residents who are priced out of Montclair, can no longer afford to live in town due to increasing property values and the high cost of rental housing. I understand that. I've lived in town for 40 years plus. I've seen a lot of changes over the 4 decades I've been here. I think most of the changes are for the better. Some maybe not so good. And I understand the concerns about gentrification and its effect upon the diversity that we all value in this community, and its effect upon potentially displacing lower income residents who can't afford to live here anymore. These are real issues, and they're significant issues. However, I don't believe those issues are relevant to this application and to my client's right to develop his property. Those issues, which are serious philosophical and policy issues, need to be grappled with and resolved, if they're able to be resolved, by our elected officials, the mayor and council, through the adoption of zoning regulations that would somehow control or combat or limit the gentrification that is undoubtedly taking place in this town. But again, those are serious and difficult policy issues that need to be addressed by our elected officials through substantial and substantive changes in zoning regulations and zoning ordinances regarding density requirements, affordable housing requirements, among other things. The burden or the responsibility to address the concerns regarding gentrification and the increased cost of housing in Montclair, again, are policy issues that are to be resolved that need to be resolved by the mayor and council, not by my client, not by the applicant here who owns this small individual lot on Hartley Street. No matter how you may feel about the effects of gentrification in Montclair, I think it should be clear to this board, given the experience you have in analyzing and deciding, applications such as this, that the applicant has legal rights here. The applicant has the right to develop the property in accordance with the applicable zoning and development regulations, as well as the laws of the state of New Jersey. He has no personal obligation to sacrifice or reduce or minimize his development rights in order to promote public policy issues that have not been addressed or adopted by the Township Council. What the Township Council has adopted with respect to this property and properties in the neighborhood is an extensive redevelopment plan which covers this property as well as neighboring properties on Bloomfield Avenue, New and Mission Street, and Washington Street. And it's the development plan that controls my client's rights with respect to the development of this property, and it's the development plan which should inform the board's decision on this application. And the basic, premise here is that almost 20 years ago, the town decided that it was important to redevelop this neighborhood and these properties. To my knowledge, even though it's, again, almost 20 years has gone by, I can't think of any significant, if any, redevelopment that has taken place anywhere here, even though the town has, again, stated a basic goal for this neighborhood that we want to see redevelopment, we want to see deteriorated and unutilized properties put to use. We want to encourage private investment. I think what we're trying to do here meets those fundamental goals. And you're talking about what's good for the community. Well, the town says we want redevelopment here. We've wanted it for 20 years, and that's what we're proposing to do. Now, if I could just take a couple of minutes, there's been a lot of talk about this redevelopment plan, which, as you know, it's the plan that creates the zoning that governs this application. First of all, the plan, although it refers to the importance of affordable housing, does not impose any affordable housing requirements on this property, or really any of the properties in the redevelopment area, unless there were a certain number of units. And I think at the time this plan was adopted, the requirement was that you were required to provide one affordable housing unit for every 7 units. It's now one of every 5. And the plan basically decided not to change that general requirement was sufficient to produce or promote the affordable housing goal of this plan. The plan could have provided that you had to provide one of every 2 units affordable. It doesn't. It didn't do that. The redevelopment plan also, I found it interesting to read it. It's fairly lengthy. In 2002, the town council, basically determined this area to be an area needed redevelopment. And then, there was a lengthy process that took place involving substantial involvement of the community in coming up with this plan. I think it's important to note, that the plan was, the development of the plan was overseen by a steering committee consisting of approximately 25 community members, including William Harrison, longtime and still current chair of the zoning board, and prominent members of the Fourth Ward community, including Audrey Fletcher, former Fourth Ward councilperson, Sandra Lang, who I think was the Fourth Ward councilperson at the time the plan was developed, and our old friend, longtime chairman of this board, John Wynn. They were all members of this steering committee. And the plan also notes that there was substantial outreach to the community for input in this plan. There were public meetings, including meetings with business owners, property owners, and other stakeholders. And all of that was taken into account. So there was, again, substantial input from the community, and the town adopted this plan, which creates the standards for development in this neighborhood, and most importantly for tonight's purposes, for this particular property. And we've heard talk about the goals of the redevelopment plan. There are 6 that are enumerated. 2 of them are the rehabilitation of deteriorated and underutilized properties, and the goal of stimulating private investment to redevelop this neighborhood. None of that, unfortunately, has happened. We're trying to make that happen and fulfill and accomplish the goals of this plan. My client has spent a lot of money to acquire this property, and he's prepared to spend a lot of money to construct this project, assuming the board approves it, which, again, this is what the town wanted, to try to stimulate private investment. And we're taking a property that had a church on it, that had been essentially abandoned and unutilized for several years, was in a deteriorated state, and my client had the right to demolish the church because this is not an historic property. It's not designated historic. It's not even a potential historic resources, which is why the building could be demolished without approval from the HPC. And also, speaking of the church and Ms. Avery's concerns about parking or creating additional parking, the church was there, an assembly use. I don't know how large the church was, but it had 0 parking. We're now replacing it with a new use that meets the parking requirements. We don't need a parking variance. We're providing the amount of parking that's required for our property. We're not required to provide more parking than we actually need. Would that be a good thing? Sure. But that's generally not what happens. The town tells us how many parking spaces were required, and we meet that requirement. You can't require more parking than what your plan requires. So again, talk about the specifics of this project. Number one, the use that we're proposing, apartments or multifamily, is specifically a permitted use under the redevelopment plan. We comply with all the bulk requirements spelled out in the redevelopment plan. The plan allows for, we've heard this before, but I think it's important to summarize. The plan allows for buildings 67 feet in height. We're proposing a building that's 46.5 feet, 20 feet lower than the maximum that's permitted. The plan allows for 6 stories. We're proposing 4 stories. The plan provides for a density requirement which would allow 4 apartments. We're only proposing 3. So we meet those issues. We meet the parking requirement. We meet all the setback requirements. We meet all of the requirements except 2 that we absolutely have no control over. We're an undersized lot. We can't comply with the 80-foot lot width requirement. We can't comply with the 15,000 square foot requirement. We attempted to talk to neighbors about acquiring a property to expand our size of our property. There was no interest, so we're left with an undersized lot. Now, there are a lot of decided, reported New Jersey cases dealing with undersized lots, and I'm certainly not going to get into a lengthy discussion of those cases. However, the fundamental conclusion of those cases is that undersized lots generally, by their nature, meet the definition for a hardship variance. When you talk about C1 variances, which are generally referred to as hardship variances, and as you've heard numerous times, hardship doesn't mean financial hardship to the applicant, but it means a hardship that's created by the particular size, shape, topography of the particular property. Here, the hardship is by virtue of the fact that it's undersized, and we can't do anything about that. We tried to expand the property, we can't. So if you say, well, you can't develop this property, well, then you've kind of made the property, it's almost like inverse condemnation, and it's property can't be utilized, and there's some cases that refer to that as possibly constituting an unlawful taking of the property. But the cases basically have concluded that the undersized lots, by their very nature, assuming you can't expand them, satisfy the requirement for a hardship variance. And I'm going to read, if you will allow me, a portion from the Cox and Koenig handbook on land use law in the state of New Jersey that we all refer to as sort of the Bible. And in that treatise, and this is just for the record, I believe it's page 465, is the following quote. The result is that in most instances, an applicant need do no more to establish a prima facie case of hardship than to prove that the lot is an undersized, isolated lot. To do so, the applicant may have to establish that no additional land is available for purchase, which would enable the property to conform to the district standards. If the applicant then satisfies the negative criteria, in addition to showing it's an undersized lot, the variance will be granted. That's a quote right out of the Cox. So, This is a case where a hardship variance is required and justified based upon the case law and based upon the requirements for granting a variance. I mean, Mr. Stimmel has also laid out alternative arguments that you could also justify the variance under C2, and I think you certainly can, but I think it's even a stronger case under C1. These are conditions that we can't control. We can't meet these requirements. It's impossible. To just, well, let me talk about the design waivers for a minute. One is for the driveway width. 12 feet's required. We have 10.5 feet for about 6 or 7 feet as you enter into. This is just a driveway, which is more than adequate. Most cars, I think, are no more than 6 feet wide. We're talking 10.5 feet. This board, I know of 2 applications that this board has considered and approved over the last year that involved driveway widths of, I think, less than 10 feet. One was for 182 Glenridge Avenue, which is right next to the Midtown parking garage. The other one was for 135 Valley Road, which was for the Cush Connections, when they were planning to go into that site. And the board approved a site plan with an existing driveway that I believe was about 10 feet. It's certainly enough room for a car to get in and out, and that's all you got. You've got cars just going through to get to the back. They're not stopping within the building unless there was a mechanical problem which caused them to stop, but there's plenty of room to go through. And this is also a driveway that's only going to be used by the people living there, the 3 residents. This is not, you're not going to have members of the public, potential retail customers that might not be familiar with the property that, would be using this driveway. It's a limited use for the 3 tenants, who would be going in and out of that driveway. The other variance relating to the amount of landscaping required, again, it's really, virtually impossible us to provide to meet the requirement, and as Mr. Stimmel noted, if we did, it would be in the rear of the building, which would be hidden from view and nobody would see it. And you're talking about a modest amount of space, less than the size of a parking space. We've provided adequate drainage. I think we've had a lot of testimony on that, and most importantly, the engineer has reviewed and approved, the drainage plans, and determined them to be adequate. I just want to mention a couple of other points that have come up in the course of the meetings in terms of concerns that have been raised. I mean, I already mentioned affordable housing. We're not required to provide any affordable housing. The plan doesn't require it. The plan refers to the existing inclusionary zoning ordinance at that time as being adequate and did not impose any affordable housing requirement, and it would be unfair and improper for the board to deny this application because we're not providing an affordable housing unit that we're not obligated to provide. Just like it would not be proper for the board, as Mr. Herron suggested, that even though we believe we satisfied the fire code requirements for ingress, that, well, you should require more anyway. Well, that's not, we have to comply with the land use requirements. We have to comply with all building code requirements. We have to meet your engineer's requirements, all of those things. And if we don't, if we don't meet code requirements, well, then the plans have to be revised, or maybe the project doesn't get built if they can't be made to comply. There was also some comments, I don't think this is a major concern, but there were some concerns about the width of the street being fairly narrow, and now we're adding, additional, development to the street. Well, cars, Hartley Street's only 1 block long, and it's one way going towards Bloomfield Avenue. Cars get through there now, and we're adding maybe 3 additional cars I mean, if you say that the street's too narrow and you should deny this application on those grounds, well, then the effect of that would be there'd be no redevelopment on any of the other properties on Hartley Street because the street's too narrow. It's a public street and it's tight, but cars get through there now, and they would get through there if this project is constructed. Again, just, to sort of summarize, there's substantial requirements laid out in specificity in this redevelopment plan regarding bulk regulations, permitted land uses, design guidelines, et cetera. We've presented a plan that meets all of those requirements except the two requirements really that we can't control, which is the size of the land and the width of the property. They're existing conditions beyond our control. We've developed a project that takes into account the smallness of this site. We've got a narrow building. We've been able to provide the amount of parking. We've been able to meet the density requirements. We're well within the height and the number of story requirements. So it's in large part a very, compliant plan. Just looking at some of the comments from the public, and by the way, I think it's also important to point out here that we've heard a lot of questioning from the public at the last meeting and comments at tonight's meeting, with the possible exception of one person who I think was a resident of New Street at the last meeting. None of the people who have commented or objected to this plan live on Hartley Street or anywhere in the immediate neighborhood. And because their concerns are more about the gentrification issue and the affordable housing, which I've already addressed. So, I think this is a good project. This is a project that redevelops this property, which is what the town has wanted to happen for over 20 years, but hasn't happened until now. And maybe this will stimulate other redevelopment in the area and other private reinvestment, which again is another goal of the plan. And the plan really fulfills the goals and objectives of the redevelopment plan, and most importantly meets the particular requirements of the redevelopment plan. And I think we've provided more than adequate justification for the exceptions or the variances and design waivers that we require. So for those reasons, I respectfully submit that this is a project that is worthy of this board's approval, and I would hope you would view the project favorably and grant us a site plan approval subject to the various conditions that have been discussed throughout these hearings. So, thank you again for your time.
Thank you. What was the page you cited in Cox?
The page, bear with me.
That's what I heard too, but I wasn't sure if that was the right one.
I had written it down.
Oh, it depends on what year? Okay.
It's page 453 in the current edition.
That's what I see on my screen. Okay.
Yeah. The current edition of the Cox Handbook.
All right. Hearing is closed. Thoughts from the board? Mayor.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the residents and neighbors that came out and offered their thoughts. It's really appreciative, and I'd like to begin by just saying that when we talk about redevelopment and whatever we're going to consider to build somewhere, we generally talk about the character of a neighborhood. And we talk about what would generally fit in to a neighborhood that we're planning on building something. And so as I look at this particular development that's being proposed here for the Hartley neighborhood, I think that it is in no way consistent with the character of the neighborhood. It's out of scale, the neighborhood. If you look across the street there, you have a historic church. If you go a little bit further down the road, you have some small houses that some appear to be row houses. If you swing around onto Washington, same thing, continuation of smaller houses that appear to be on smaller lots, and nothing that would be consistent with what's being proposed here. So after we talk about the character of the neighborhood, then we begin to talk about redevelopment. And I heard a lot of discussion about redevelopment, and we want redevelopment, but I don't think we want redevelopment at any cost. I think we want redevelopment that is going to bring new life to a community. I think that we want redevelopment that is going to try to make sure that the residents that are living there now and their families who've laid the fabric of the community will be able to afford to stay in that community and offer options of housing that will be more affordable to residents in that neighborhood than what I believe is being proposed here. We spent a lot of time talking about the fourth round of the fourth round housing element. And in that, we talked about preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing. So in and of itself, when you speak about preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing, you might say, well, you know, there's no house on that land. But when I think about that and I look at what's happening, I think that we are absolutely going to be in violation of this preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing if we decide that we want to allow to have an oversized development on a smaller lot. The lot size here, like we're saying, the 30 feet wide or whatever, so the lot size here is not an isolated small lot. And when we were reading a little bit ago about that, it says an undersized, isolated lot. This is not an undersized, isolated lot. Yes, it is undersized, but it's not isolated, because without having gone door to door and measuring, it appears as though many of the lots in that area probably are undersized. So what I would recommend that we do in order to make this a magnificent redevelopment project and something that would be welcome to a community when we're talking about how to maintain affordable housing, when we're talking about how to slow the roll in gentrification. We're talking about neighborhoods like Mission Street, New Street. We're talking about Hartley, where the lots are smaller, where the houses are smaller, and we're talking about what can we do to maintain them so that people can, by virtue of their size, be able to afford them. So if we move forward with this plan and then continue to do that for the next lot and another lot over, what we will be doing is to be perpetuating gentrification in there by expanding the lot sizes rather than to leave them smaller and developing something by virtue of size that will be more affordable than what we will do if we expand, if we give permission to put an oversized development on a small lot. So for that reason, I am not in favor of putting this here. I'd be very much in favor of trying to see if this whole idea that we spend a lot of time talking about in terms of preserving naturally occurring affordable housing and naturally occurring opportunities, how we as a planning board vote on that, because we spent a lot of time on that, and I think that message was loud and clear. And I, for one, would like to make sure that we try to utilize these lots and develop something nice, yes, but make it that so the size is consistent with the neighborhood, and by virtue of size, it will be more affordable.
Mr. Ian-Wally.
You know, on the two variances, the C1 variances, when we heard testimony about whether we should consider the variances, I didn't hear the legal argument when there was testimony, and I'd like to find out more, because I'm not familiar with this kind of automatic C1 variance that Attorney Trembulac was talking about. So, Arthur, do you have any insights about maybe clarifying what Attorney Trembulac was saying in his closing statement about how there's kind of no choice on this C1 variance, which is an automatic hardship variance?
It's not that there's no choice, it's just
Right.
undersized lots are what they are. They do not, let me just finish. They don't conform to the zoning of the area in which they are found. As a result, they necessarily call out the question of hardship because of the size, the location, the topography, or other factors. I'm going to have to agree that the case law generally says that where there is an undersized lot, it generally will be granted variances because you can't develop it. It can never comply. This lot is the same thing. The lot can never comply with the size requirement of this zone. It can never comply with the frontage or width requirement of this zone. But to deny the application on the basis that it does not comply means that the applicant can't develop it. And that is a right that the applicant does have. The applicant can try to develop it, but as always, it's up to this board to determine whether or not the undersized nature of the lot can be addressed, or should be addressed. I don't know how else to answer the question other than to say that the case law generally supports what Mr. Trembulac has said.
But can you explain that just a little bit more? Because I am trying to understand what you're saying.
Sure.
And when you say can't be developed, I don't understand why it can be developed. We know that it can be developed. You just make a smaller design. You
No.
have something smaller
No.
to go on it.
No.
Okay, you can't do anything
can't-
smaller on it.
What you could make a smaller building.
Correct.
Certainly. But
Right.
the applicant is not seeking bulk variances here. There's no bulk variances required, as somebody said.
And what's a bulk variance?
Bulk variance would be a setback requirement,
Right?
for example.
Or a height, or
a height.
Right,
of size
right.
almost?
Right.
Yes. So this application does not seek a bulk variance.
Right.
So it's and the only variances that the application calls out are something that Mr. Trembulac has said they can't control. They can't do anything about. It is what it is, as my wife is fond of saying. The problem, that can't be overcome. Absolutely cannot be overcome. If the applicant made a smaller building, okay. the
Then
applicant
it
made
can
a
be
smaller-
overcome.
But in the,
No.
Okay,
The two
but I don't
variances can
understand,
never be
if it's a
overcome.
smaller building, it'll fit on the lot, right?
A smaller building will fit on the lot.
Right.
But the applicant is not required, because there are no bulk variances requested.
Right,
So the applicant can build to the extent of the lot lines.
right,
That is true.
right.
But those lot lines are circumscribed by the size of the lot itself. It
Well-
can't be made bigger.
Mr. Trembulac, does it make a difference that the, I guess for lack of a better word, the severity of the deficiency? I mean, they need 15,000. I mean, this, we refer to the policy document. Mr. Trembulac referred to the policy document often. The policy document contemplated this lot remaining a church. The policy document contemplated 15,000 square feet and 80-foot frontage in order to build something of this scale. So given the severity of the deficiency, would that be something that a court would consider?
I'm not sure I completely understand what you're asking me. Mike.
So what I'm asking you is, the policy document that granted the policy document to which Mr. Trembulac refers to.
The plan.
The plan.
The plan.
Requires, in order to build a building of this scale, 15,000 square feet and 80 feet of frontage, correct?
That's what the document provides.
Yeah.
But
Right.
this lot is not.
No, I understand, but my question is, given a deficiency now on a 15,000 square feet requirement, 11,601 square feet, and of an 80-foot frontage requirement, a 50-foot deficiency, does that have any, would that have any role in a court's determination that perhaps this building is just out of scale for a lot of this size?
I won't predict that. I don't
Okay.
know what a judge would or would not do.
But, okay, is there any legal precedent that you're aware of?
No, and the reason I say it with hesitation is because this property was included in the redevelopment plan.
Right, but that
Knowing
redevelopment,
that it was the size that it was.
right, but that redevelopment plan also contemplated preservation of the church, and it also contemplated buildings of this size having certain lot requirements. That's the policy document of which the applicant relies.
As well it should. I would need to look at that a little bit more.
Sure.
If you want a memo on that, I'll get you a memo on it, but.
I don't know that we have a.
That's the memo I'd like to see too. We all want to see.
I'm very curious
I like
about it.
the memo.
Look, I want to make a statement first. I want to say, I think Mr. Robertson has done a commendable job of listening to the concerns of the board, and has worked with us on trying to conform this building. But I have a tendency to agree with the mayor that the scale of this, on this size, of a deficiency of 11,600 square feet, to me, is not insignificant. I know we hear that it's only 2 variances, but these are 2 extremely significant variances, and you also have a policy document that contemplated a much smaller building on this lot. So those are things that I'm trying to reckon with, and I'm having a difficult time reckoning with that.
Neiman.
So, the document doesn't say that if the building was made smaller, the variances wouldn't need to be in place. It at no point says anything like that. The document says that any construction of anything, so if I wanted to put a 500 square foot Cape Cod, about as small a house as you could build on this lot, I would still need to be here before this board seeking a variance. So, like,
Because the lot width is still the lot width.
Because the lot width,
regardless of
exactly.
the building
As Keith said, the lot width is still the lot width, and the variance is for the lot width. And so while there may be members of the board or members of the public who see a smaller building as more desirable, right, that wouldn't change the state of the variance, right? And that wouldn't change the question of, is a variance necessary? And so I think to the point of hardship, like, that's where it comes in. If they wanted to do anything on this property, they would need to be here before us. And so we need to account for that in making our decision, right? We need to be aware of that fact, that they have to be here. And I think, and I'm not an attorney, but I think that's where the presumption of need comes from in the case law, or the presumption of acceptance, granting the variance, like that general.
Said another way.
Yeah,
the application complies with all of the requirements of the policy document, except for the fact that it is on a small lot.
Correct.
I think that's what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah.
And that is the case.
Yeah. And so I think that's just important to have stated, right? We're here because the lot is too small, not because the building is too big. It's because the lot is too small. That's why we're all here today.
Mr. Ian Wally.
So this is what I'm wrestling with. The redevelopment plan and its bulk requirements were based on a 15,000 square foot minimum lot and an 80-foot wide. So when you take that redevelopment plan as a whole, they said, okay, you can build this bulk if you have this big piece of land. There's no any sort of discussion in that redevelopment plan. Well, if you only have a smaller lot, you can build less. So we're looking at bulk requirements that were established for certain lot sizes. And when those lot sizes aren't there, the question in my head is, are those bulk limits still appropriate? So you could have had a redevelopment plan which said, if you have 15,000 feet, you get to do this. If you don't, you have an R2. You know, it slips down to R2 because you just have a 30-foot wide lot and you build a two-family house. And that way, it sort of protects, you're not applying these bulk variances for 15,000, I'm sorry, you're not applying these bulk requirements where there's requirements of 15,000 square feet. So it's kind of a deficiency in the redevelopment plan.
Yeah, I would agree 100% that there's a problem with the redevelopment plan. It's 20 years old, nothing has been building underneath it, and as a council person, I would recommend that we scrap that plan and we start over with the community giving us some input into what do they want to see in that area of town. But that's the future. Right now, we have to deal with this applicant, and I think the application, in my view, it's not ideal, but I would vote for it.
Well, I'd like to ask one question. We were saying that because the lot is small, no matter what, they'd have to come for a variance. That's given. But there is nothing that says that the board has to approve the one that takes as though it was a big lot. It could approve if they came to us with a plan that fitted the size of the lot. Is
But
that
it
correct?
does. The project fits within the size of the lot.
Excuse me, maybe I didn't make what I was saying clear. Because the plan allows that the applicant can build to the 4 quarters of the plan, of the lot, there's no requirement that we find it satisfactory that the plan uses every bit of that and is too big in the opinion for what that lot is. Isn't there a difference between you have to come to us because the lot is not the standard size that is required, and that even though it's not the standard size required, we must approve something which is oversized for the lot that it is?
No, you've absolutely articulated a very, very fine point. The problem, from my point of view, is that if, and we're just conjecturing here, if the board determines to deny the application and the applicant takes an appeal, the court will look at the facts, the same facts, and this record that we're creating here, and try to make a decision as to whether or not what the board did was arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable in light of those facts. So I buy, or at least I understand the articulated difference you've made. You can, it's up to you, no matter what you want, whatever you do is up to this board. You have the discretion. You know the area. You know the situation. You know, based on what we've discussed briefly as being the law. And the law is defined, in this case, by that zone, by that redevelopment plan. So a court would look at all of that and say, did the board act reasonably if it decides to deny the application, or did the board act unreasonably based on the facts that were before it? That will be what the appeal would be about.
I think, Ms. Willis, one of the things that I think you might be getting to is the difference in the two different variances, right? C1, we talked a lot about the legal side of C1, where it's the hardship variance. And, you know, sometimes we look at, is it a self-created hardship, right? And those are the ones that typically don't get approved because it's the applicant coming before us, and I don't think this is the case here, but the applicant comes before us, and by right of what they're trying to put on the lot, they've created their own hardship. In this case, the lot is the lot, right? They didn't create it. But I think one of the things that you were getting to is the fit for the neighborhood, right? And that, to me, feels more like the C2 variance, benefits outweighing the detriments. And I think that's where, you know, you can have an argument, do the benefits of this proposed development, do they outweigh the detriments, you know, when we compare it to the zoning and the plan? But I think what we were talking about before with the C1, with the hardship, is that it is a hardship that they didn't create. And I think that's the challenge, is trying to look at it in those two different lights.
Can I ask why, when Mr. Trimmelak, if I heard you correctly, when you were talking about the lot, they have the word in there, an isolated lot. And this does not appear to be an isolated undersized lot. It appears that there's a couple of undersized lots all up and down there, so that anytime anybody on that street wanted to come and develop something, you know, they would have to do this. And because it says an isolated lot, to me that means that if it's not isolated, then it's not looked upon in the same way with the hardship. Is that not a possibility? Because they do have the word in there, an isolated lot.
Well, you know, I think isolated means, that the applicant only owns this one lot. There are other undersized lots there, probably both of the properties are
Probably all of them on the block.
So one thing, if I might, and I really support deliberating this, but I think I want to make an important point, because
Thank you.
we're talking about, well, this is too much for this property. You should, this is too much for the property, you should, reduce the scope of the project. Well, we're only proposing 3 units. If we knock off a unit, it's not a permitted use. Multifamily dwellings and a lot of commercial uses that Mr. Stimmel rattled off in his testimony are permitted, but what's not permitted is a one-family house or a two-family house. And that would require an application to the zoning board for that. So that, reducing the scale of this project makes it even more non-conforming in that the use would not be permitted. Because it would be going from a 3-family to a 2-family.
Mayor, if there's one thing I want to point out regarding your comment about this isolated lot, I believe you have to look at this lot in the context of the redevelopment plan. Because I'm looking at my report, my January 24th report on page 6, where I had I have the zoning, and you can see where the redevelopment plan affects Hartley Street and where the R2 zone affects Hartley Street. So there's basically 3 lots on Hartley Street that are undersized. So I'm just trying in the redevelopment plan. So you have 3 lots. I don't know if that constitutes an isolated lot, but there are 3 of them that do not meet the 80-foot requirement. And then there's other lots on that street, but they're in the R2 zone, so I think it's a different argument.
And I appreciate Attorney Trimmelak for bringing up the fact that they could not do a 2-family or 1-family house there.
I'll say
On that point, again, this is really hard. If the minimum lot size is 15,000 feet, it's pretty obvious you wouldn't want to put a house on a 15,000 square foot parcel. So again, you have to go back to the original size requirement, which I'm stuck on. Yeah, I mean, a single, a 2-family home on a 15,000 foot lot seems wasteful in a redevelopment plan. So I get the point about how it's not allowed, but it's not allowed in the context of that the minimum lot size has to be 15,000 feet. That's.
I just would read a brief section of the Cox book. Quote.
What page you on?
I brought my earlier version.
2024.
Oh, it's 24,
It's
okay.
2024.
Which can you cite the chapter?
It is. It's section 30-1.1.
Okay.
449.
That's page 449, which I think in 24, but I think the current version is page 451.
That may
paragraph
well be.
3.
And I just want to read because the mayor has raised the isolated issue. And, quote, "The isolated lot case is one which frequently plagues boards of adjustment. The situation giving rise to the problem is that a person owns a single lot, not owning any adjoining land around it, which does not meet the area and/or dimension requirements of the current zoning ordinance for a building lot. This is a non-conforming lot." Just to give color to the isolated aspect of what that means.
Thank you.
This,
Mr. Borshoff.
This is a hard one, and I've gone back and forth, and I would say my biggest personal concern is precedent that would be set, but to your point, Councilor Lockman, this is a deficiency. in the redevelopment plan and not this application specifically. And I tend to agree with you that it would be more of a reluctant acceptance of a proposal like this with an understanding that the redevelopment plan should be more, well, just redone or changed to kind of avoid that precedent. Because also, how do we penalize someone on precedent when that doesn't exist yet? But we're setting it, but I think we need to address it in the plan and not as much through this particular application, which it would be a hard time for me to vote against.
I would just draw, in 2011, the legislature changed the board's considerations from what was called the time of decision rule to the time of application rule. And basically what it means is that when an applicant submits an application that is deemed complete, that application is controlled by the law in place at that time. It used to be that the boards could decide based on the law that was happening. So not frequently, but what could happen is an application would be submitted. Maybe the mayor and council didn't like the application. They would change the law, and then I'm serious. And then by the time the application came up for a vote, they would be subject to the new law. That's no longer the case.
So we can't push this off. No.
We can vote on
Not
this.
within context of that.
But it's something for the mayor and council to
Yeah.
think about changing going forward, because you're saying setting a precedent, which I believe strongly that there's deficiencies in this redevelopment plan. And just by the fact that no one's really used it before, because whatever, they can't really build anything.
Right.
So, but I don't think this applicant should be penalized because of that. And I think that the building, in my view, is a fine building. It will be 3 new units, adding more housing to the housing stock of Montclair, and I think that's important. And it's near a railroad station, a transit station, which maybe people will not have cars, or maybe, not everybody in the unit will have a car. So, and I kind of think it might be the booster to get more building in the neighborhood, good or bad, I don't know, but we'll be seeing that if they do come. But that was the purpose of the redevelopment plan, to spur new development, and that's what's happening. And I think this is a good application.
I would also add, and again, with a certain amount of reluctance, number one, I don't want to see that. I actually walk on Hartley Street daily, right? I'm there very regularly. My children go to Bullock, and I live around the corner as well, just for context. And I would be reticent to see that empty for another decade, knowing also that bringing it down to 2 families would no longer comply with current zoning, which would then just extend the potential process of it being completely vacant again.
So I just did some quick math, and on the 3 lots on Hartley in the redevelopment plan, so 12, 10, and 8, even if you added them all up, and I may be off by a few square feet, they would not hit that 15,000 square foot lot minimum.
What would they be?
They would be around 12,000.
Okay.
And so they were included in the plan nonetheless, right? And while the plan didn't directly contemplate some sort of ratio by which you have a smaller lot, therefore you have a smaller building, right? It did allow for a variance process, which is why we're all here tonight, right? So it was a catch-all contemplation, but it is contemplated, right? And they did account for the fact that there are going to be situations where we need to have a say.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Finish up, Jake.
I think given the 15,000 square foot lot minimum, and kind of if you look at all the parcels included in the plan, there does seem to have been an effort to encourage consolidation of those lots to make larger parcels with larger projects. And evidently, by virtue of the fact that it's been 20 years, it's not been successful, right? But to your point, Jeff, right, we don't want this to sit fallow and empty, right? Because that's not serving the public good or the public purpose either. There's 3 new homes, there's 3 new families that get to call a great community home. It's a building that, is, I think fits, if it's not perfect, right? Like, these buildings take time to become part of the community tapestry. All of our houses were the odd duck when they were first built. And so, I think it's overall an application that's doing the best it can with a crummy situation.
So what does that mean, though? Does that mean then that the character of what we're building no longer matters? We can just put up, any old houses that don't look anything like the rest of the street? If we accept this in terms of something that has, just totally is out of symmetry and styles. It looks nothing like the nice little row houses or whatever you call those houses that are in that area.
I'm sorry, Jake, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's all a balancing act, right? It's an act of balancing interests. And I think this is far better than any number of other options that could have come before us, right? It's not just vinyl siding. It's not a bunch of stucco, right? Like, I think this is better than a lot of other things that could have come before us. I also think it's a heck of a lot better than the car lot down the street, right? Like, I think it is an improvement to the street in comparison to the vacant lot that's there now. I think design is important, and that's why they've brought, I think, 3 different designs for the 3 times they've been in front of us, and they have been getting progressively better. But I also think that things don't need to look like everything else. They need to fit into the tapestry.
I think if you look at a town like Hoboken or Jersey City, which has a lot of row houses, you can see the little row houses that are traditional, built 150 years ago, and then something new might be built.
Yeah.
And it could be a modern thing, and it fits in. It's just because it's different, it's nice, and it's.
Mr. Chairman, we can't hear what's being said.
Oh,
Is there
sorry.
any way that we can either turn up the volume or ask the other members of the audience just to temper it to where we can actually hear the conversation?
Okay, we can ask, we can ask, hopefully if Rick is listening in the back, he can maybe turn up the volume just a little bit for the audience.
And just speak right into your microphone,
Right.
as
and the
close as
rest of
possible.
We can yell a little bit into the microphone. I think that would be helpful.
Well, just to finish my point, I think it's interesting when you have traditional homes, then you have something new, maybe modern, maybe just a reflection, a harmonization, a sense of, a cadence of what's around it, and that looks nice. So this will be the first house on this area, hopefully, that will be developed. I don't know. I mean, I guess it'll maybe spur development. That's the idea. And who knows what'll be built next to it. We have some control over that, I guess, when they come to us for variances, which inevitably they will have to do. So I'm with you, Jake. I think that the idea of having something new, you don't have to have cookie cutter houses one after another just because that's the house that's there.
I'm just talking about in planning, thank you, in planning law or in that type of thing, does the character of a neighborhood and, something you're sitting in there, does that stand any bearing? I know when we used to come before one of my all-time favorite attorneys and most brilliant zoning individual, Chairman Harrison, there's often discussion about, the character of the neighborhood when people are trying to just come in and plop something really big and out of style with what's going on there. And it used to be given consideration. So I know that was a few years back. Let's call it 2010. So now that we are 2025, getting closer to 2026, are we no longer in Montclair caring about the character? We're just putting anything goes today and then tomorrow we'll go somewhere else? Or is it in, that particular neighborhood, this is okay to go? And I'm just trying to get a lay for what still matters in terms of, these types of planning things, because I get it, if you change it, it can't be a 2-family, it can't be a 1-family, but does that mean then just any old style and whatever is fine?
I'm reminded of the house that came before this board on the corner of Walnut and Forest Street. That was an unusual residence. There's 2 little stores on the ground floor, and then there was this big residence behind a gate. And I remember my own personal reaction was, oh my God, this is unusual. I just point that out just because that's my experience of that, which means to me that, things can change. And to take Counselor Lockman's point, it's possible to have what is standard in a neighborhood with something else that is different. I think that house on Walnut and Forest is now kind of fit in with the area. I don't even notice it anymore, but when it came before us, it was like, oh my God.
But it doesn't mean that we can't consider that fact.
Can I point
correct?
something out?
Yeah,
though?
that's what I'm asking. Can we, and if we can, or if we can't in this situation, then when we go to some other neighborhood, then we also should not be able to consider the character too, because historically in this chambers, when people have come, people have considered the character of the neighborhood.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
It is, no, I get that, but I'm just asking in terms of planning, and maybe you're not qualified to answer that, and I can ask maybe Bill Harrison at some other time, if you're not, because I was asking regarding, the planning considerations when you're
It is a
going through that.
consideration.
So that's the answer
There's
then.
no
Thank
doubt.
you. It is a consideration. I appreciate that.
So we also have a planner who wanted to say something.
In crafting good ordinances, it takes a lot of work. I've always been taught that if you want to enforce something, you write it into your code.
Yeah.
If you have site plan standards are
Yeah.
incredibly important. That's where you have your authority. The value of the Historic Preservation Commission, if you want to go in depth in terms of preserving character, the ultimate authority is when you have historic preservation, and the Historic Preservation Commission has a lot more latitude than, say, a planning board. What you normally have before the Board of Adjustment is when an applicant comes for a variance, then you have influence. But those are usually bulk variances. The reason we're having this long discussion today is because this is for a pre-existing non-conforming lot, which is a little bit of a different animal. But I agree wholeheartedly with Councilor Lockman. This redevelopment plan is deficient. I'm not sure if it's best to redo this redevelopment plan or rely on the underlying zoning, because the zoning subcommittee has spent a lot of time working on making some zoning changes. But honestly, I think if you want to enforce design standards, particularly with character, you have to put it in your code and in your site plan standards. But of course, if site plan standards do not apply to 1- and 2-family homes. So, just to give you a little bit of background.
Just like to say
Thank you.
one more thing. I think this is a nice building. I don't know, there seems to be some objection to the way it looks, but it's brick, it's got some interesting visual aspect to it in the front. I don't know why people are.
And the redevelopment plan includes many pages of
Yeah.
design standards.
I was gonna
And it
say.
was designed to meet
Yeah.
the many pages
primary
of design
concern is the scale.
standards
Right,
in
right.
this
No,
redevelopment
no, I know, but
plan.
And the
people have
scale
said that
doesn't,
it's like
but the
it's
scale doesn't
icky.
necessarily conform with the neighborhood. That's the concern. It's not necessarily the look, the feel, the brick. It's really, in my estimation, does the scale conform to the neighborhood? And I'm not sure.
And what controls
I'm
the
not sure that
scale?
does.
That's
And
the-
what
those are
neighborhood
the-
are you looking
the
at? I
bulk
mean, if you look at
requirements,
Bloomfield
right?
Avenue's apartment buildings, then you have this.
Sure.
A lot, then you have a gym, then you have this building, then you have an empty lot. There's a church across the street, and there's a couple of houses. So this kind of creates a neighborhood, in my view, but.
Like the Y, like an old YWCA or something that is commercial, doesn't look like it's moving towards any type of a residential, and I guess because it sits close to, commercial.
And one other point, I think when you look at the neighborhood, you have to look at where the redevelopment line is drawn and distinguish this property
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the 3 properties that are in the redevelopment plan from the other properties on Hartley Street that are in the R2 zone.
Yeah.
For some reason, these 3 properties were included in the redevelopment plan and not in the
Yeah,
R2
that-
zone with
And
the
Jen,
other properties.
correct, can you correct me if I'm wrong? That building that was next to the church, only half that building was included in this development zone? I mean, I think there was.
Really? No.
Am I wrong about that?
No,
I
think
feel like
it's
there
the
was a
whole-
bigger
you mean
store.
To the south?
To the south.
Correct.
I thought lots 4 and 5 were
There's
connected.
the first properties in the redevelopment plan, the other properties in the R2 zone.
Right.
They are now, I believe they're under one ownership, but so a woman, or somebody, I don't
Yeah.
even know who has acquired those properties, Some of them are in the R2 zone, and one of them's in the redevelopment.
They're both
plan.
demoed, those lots, right? But were they not one building at some point, and there was the church and then a larger
I don't know about.
They're separate.
building, if I'm not
That's-
They were
mistaken?
separate buildings.
They were two
Yeah.
separate buildings,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks, Tony. All right.
I think, again, I don't want to interrupt the conversation, but Janice raised an important point. I mean, you know, when the development plan was created, the intention was to treat this property and the two properties on either side as really part of the Bloomfield Avenue streetscape, not the balance of the Hartley streetscape, because you have to draw the line somewhere, and here the line was drawn in the middle of Hartley Street on this side. So it's to say, well, this doesn't fit in with the rest of Hartley Street. Well, the rest of Hartley Street was not included in this plan. So I think it's an important distinction. You know, it may not fit with the remainder of Hartley Street, which is two-family, because the town didn't want two families on these lots. They felt that this was closer to Bloomfield Avenue and should have kind of the same zoning we've had on Bloomfield Avenue in C1, allowing 6 stories, et cetera.
I mean, figure 5.1 of the redevelopment plan, let's see what page this is, page 30, does show it in the Bloomfield Avenue mixed use
Exactly.
shading, right? And
What
it's,
page?
this is page 30 of the redevelopment plan, figure 5.1. It shows it in green, which is the Bloomfield Ave mixed use designation. So it does appear that the plan was trying to include this lot in what Bloomfield Avenue should look like, more so than what Hartley Street should look like, which, again, I agree with what other people have said. I think this redevelopment plan is not up to what our current ideal of this area is. I think it's an old plan. I think it should be revised. I don't know if the underlying zoning is the right place to go, but either way, I mean, this needs to change. Something needs to change with this, because I don't think this is quite appropriate for Hartley Street as it's presented, but I also feel bound by this plan because that's what's in effect at the time of the applicant's application was submitted, and these are the requirements that we're bound by. As much as I think it should be different to fit in better with Hartley Street, these are the requirements that are before us. So, you know, and I appreciate the changes that the applicant has made to address some of the concerns about the look, especially from Bloomfield Avenue, because I think that's a critical one. I appreciate what they've done. But I'm not blind to the issues of gentrification in this area and how this building and others that may get redeveloped as part of this redevelopment plan will affect our neighbors in the Fourth Ward and specifically in this area. It's a real problem, and it's not one that's easily solved. And it's one that this redevelopment plan just insufficiently addresses. And that's the other reason why I think this needs a fresh look and it needs to be revised. But as I look at what's been presented in this application, what the standards are, I mean, to me, it does fit a C1 variance for hardship because we can't change the lot width and the lot size. And as much as I'm sensitive to the amount of the deficiency, I still don't think it gets to a point of a substantial detriment to, you know, the zone plan.
I'm grateful for all the testimony and.
Is your microphone on, Mr.
Yeah,
Ewald?
I'm
Okay.
thankful for the additional discussion. It was helpful for me. Arthur and Alan speaking about the requirements. So I think that my concerns are kind of automatically addressed now. I feel like the arguments and the testimony that I've heard does create a C1 hardship variance. I was questioning that, but I think it has been established. I also agree that just a kind of a sidebar, this is 43 feet or 44 feet. The redevelopment plan is 67 feet, so this is more moderate than what could be on, the redevelopment plan would be a much taller building and would really overshadow the other properties on the street. So the fact that, you know, even though it's 3 stories above ground floor, it's better than 67 feet under the redevelopment plan. And then if we do consider altering the redevelopment plan, in that green area, if 67 feet stays on Bloomfield Avenue, this one is 40-something, but everything to the south of this maybe could transition to a lower height to align more completely with the southern side of Hartley Street. So it would go from a high to a low and not go to this building and then back up to 67 feet with this one in the middle. So, but thank you for all the explanation. Appreciate it.
I just want to point out, Tony, we had that back and forth earlier, that I'm not convinced that they could have gone to 6 stories because of the requirement to add a second staircase and also the parking requirement. I'm not convinced they could have satisfied it, but I do take your point. I think you've come up with a sensible compromise here and solution. I think we do push to revise the plan south of this building. We do seem to be bound by this, but I think revision is appropriate and necessary to the redevelopment plan.
Does anybody else wish to be heard? Nope. All right. In that case, again, with all the caveats that I said before, the redevelopment plan being insufficient, I feel like the applicant has made their case for a C1 hardship variance in this instance. Again, I wish it were different. I wish the redevelopment plan were written differently and we'd have different standards to consider, but these are the standards that we have to judge this application by, even if we don't like it. And with that, I would move to approve this application with the conditions that we've discussed, which hopefully council can remember.
And I can. Shall I go through?
Please.
Thank you. Some of them may have been addressed in later iterations of the plan, so I just say that up front. The applicant shall increase the illumination in the driveway aisle and submit a revised lighting plan with both to be made acceptable to the board engineer. I think that was completed. That was completed. The applicant will install an irrigation system, sprinkler heads, in the mulch basins. The applicant has consented to comply to the extent it has not already done so with the comments of the board engineer's review letter. The applicant will, and I think this may have been done too, the applicant will revise the brick facade on the north side of the proposed structure with texture to reduce its effect as a, quote, blank wall.
That was completed.
I have that the applicant shall pay the residential development fee required pursuant to our code. And then tonight I have that the applicant shall be solely responsible for the construction, maintenance, and repair of the pipe connecting to the Bloomfield Avenue catch basin.
Do we have to include the landscaping, and I believe there was a snow removal issue as well?
If you will.
I would like to include those, yes.
How do you?
The snow removal was in the event that there is a blizzard or that the radiant heating system is overwhelmed by the snowstorm, that the applicant should be required to remove it from the lot.
Yeah, that's what they said they were going to do.
I just want to make sure that it's in there as a condition.
That's what they said.
Remove it from the lot, meaning?
Dispose of it somewhere else.
Take it within a
out.
certain period of time or anything like that.
Arthur, I don't know what the standard is, but
24
if you
hours,
had...
that's what they give us to get us in our sidewalk.
Within 24 hours, how about that?
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll work that out.
Thank you.
Within a reasonable time period?
Within
Something.
a reasonable time period.
I don't know. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder again. Do we need to, with regard to the stormwater pipe maintenance, is that anything that we need to record in the deed or something to that effect, or?
I think.
What's the best practice there?
The current town ordinance requires that the property be deed restricted with the stormwater management system, so they would have to comply with that.
You mean with but for the maintenance? The maintenance is part of the deed? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
The-
Do we
the
need to
maintenance
have this?
requirement for the.
Sometimes we have the resolution recorded with the deed so that future property owners understand their obligation in that
Correct.
regard, but I think there's an alternate to recording with the deed, Mr. Neese.
You know,
And
if I can refresh your memory, when we worked on Pleasantville, we built a couple of houses there, they had the same thing, where they had their own catch basin, and we had some kind of agreement that they had, and I
This is-
forget
I
if it was
don't remember
recorded,
what
but
it
there was
is.
something like that, because they had a similar kind of system. And do you recall, Janice, and they had to have some kind of agreement in place to maintain the system?
Right, that was, they had a homeowner, that's a little bit, they had a
Oh, because the homeowner
association.
association, but we could still impose it on the landlord, couldn't we? Or the owner?
No. Mr. Tremblay, what's your
I have an
feeling?
objection to a deed restriction so that it's public notice for any future property owners, the requirement that the
Yeah.
owner of this property maintain, and repair the line.
I think that
don't
makes
want to
sense.
further complicate this at the time, but going forward, if somebody wants to tie into this line in connection with some other redevelopment, it might be something we might want to rethink, since my client shouldn't be responsible if 3 other properties tie in and use the same line, but that's down the road. For now, we would accept the requirement that we record a deed restriction to create public
That makes
notice of
sense.
the.
And you and I can work on
Yeah.
language that will
Yeah,
work.
sure.
Especially if there's going to be later connections.
It seems like, not that I want to complicate it, but if there's a pipe in a street, it should be Montclair's. So, I think that, and then Montclair will allow anyone who wants to, maybe this builder builds it, and then it goes back to the town. And maybe it needs to be better than an 8-inch PVC pipe. Maybe it's got to be something a little bit bigger. If you're digging the hole, putting a slightly larger pipe is not that much more money.
I think that's something
And-
that the
make it a-
council, the township engineer
Yeah.
can handle, and I think it's a good idea,
I
quite
wouldn't put it
honestly.
on this property owner if it changes hands to maintain that
No,
pipe. It's kind of a weird.
The way I look at it is that's their pipe for their property. If somebody else wants to tie into it, it's their pipe and their property. It's up to them. Now, if the township after tonight wants to put in, I don't know, 18-inch stormwater line throughout and have
Yeah,
them
we
tie
would
into
have
it,
to
I
look
think
and
that's
see
fine,
what's
and that
appropriate
would
for
come to the
that area.
revisions committee, to be evaluated whether that works in terms of, if this is passed tonight, if that works. But, I think it's a good idea to consider, but I don't think it's something that we need to get too far down the road for this applicant. So, as amended, that's my motion.
I'd second.
Mike, you second?
I second.
Okay. You guys take it, you want me to call the roll here?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Mayor Baskerville.
No, for the reasons that I said. I don't believe that it is an isolated lot, and I just don't, I'm not convinced that it's a hardship. While I have the mic, I'd also like to encourage everybody to come out Wednesday night and have the discussion on just action. Everybody that's here will love, love, love this discussion. It talks about zoning, and in particular, it talks about things in Montclair. Richard Rothstein and Leah Rothstein, his daughter, have done an incredible job. So come out Wednesday night to First Congregation Church and learn and listen to the discussion. I think you all will love it. Thanks.
And I believe you have to register first.
I'm registered, but I'm
Just
sure if you
for
come,
anybody in the
that's
public,
a
that's
big
all.
church. You guys should come. You all will love me for picking this up and reading that.
Next on the
Thank you.
roll.
Let me call, I do this alphabetically. Mr. Borshoff.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Abstains.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Ian Wally.
Case has been made, yes.
Counselor Lockman.
Yes.
Ms. Willis.
No.
Mr. Neiman.
Yes.
And Chair Brodock.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank
For
you.
your time and thought that went into this.
All right, next up, we have new business application 2931, 400 Orange Road. I understand that, but we need to at least continue to a new evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
It's morning.
Mr. Chairman, I believe
It's
it's
morning.
board policy that there will be no testimony So you certainly, after no testimony after 10 o'clock, certainly have our consent to carry this. Ms. Talley,
October 6th.
October 6th.
Does that work for you?
That will have to work for us, thank you.
Okay.
No further notice
No
required?
further notice is required. And thank you very much.
Great.
And thanks for the opportunity before that we were hoping we would get heard, but I appreciate it.
Eventually, you'll learn the timing around here. I know you don't appear before us all
Right,
that often,
right,
but, you know.
Whatever, we tried.
I generally don't ask you if you want to, come
if
up
you-
early
okay.
just for fun.
Okay.
Usually I have a
Well, you
sense
could have
about these
pushed me,
things.
but
So,
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
October 6th, that was going to be carried to. And I believe that's our next meeting?
Our next meeting's October 6th.
Right, so we don't have any further meetings in September. Do we have any committee reports to handle
Well,
tonight?
the zoning committee met. And so we've got a couple of ordinances to present to the planning board for discussion. Further work will be done. We're working on the proposed changes to the naturally occurring affordable housing zone changes. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, when you're closer, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, okay. So we're still working on those. We have Mr. Harrison from the zoning board is working with the zoning subcommittee on looking at all the different alternatives. So, yeah, and I have Zainab is working with us as well, doing a lot of GIS mapping and property analysis. So I think we're looking at a very thorough approach.
Janice, is this just Fourth Ward you're looking at?
Yeah, it's for the planning board.
For Fourth Ward only?
Oh,
Zoning
we're starting
changes?
off, yes, according to the housing plan, just looking at the certain areas on the Fourth Ward.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to start,
Okay.
and, because that was when the housing plan recommendations
Yeah.
were. And then we'll work on some of the other areas.
Why is that? Why did you decide to start in the Fourth Ward?
To implement the zoning to preserve the naturally occurring affordable housing, which was a really important part of the housing plan, and it was also one of the recommendations from the Board of Adjustment in their annual report. So that's why we're starting to look at right-fitting those zone requirements and reducing the number of variances and ensuring that development fits the size and scale of the homes in those areas. Exactly what you were talking about tonight.
Yeah, I also know that we had quite a bit of discussion here and in other bodies regarding zoning that needs to be addressed in RO so that we can put some of the specialty housing and some of the other things like that on the radar. And it just seems to me that it's really convenient to start, in the Fourth Ward, and then it leaves you further from the RO zones that I think many people, in particular on the Housing Commission, we've been talking about that for a very, very long time. So when do you think we will get to the RO time? I mean, everybody on the Housing Commission, we've been saying this for years, and that keeps getting under the radar and other things pushed forward. Do you have any idea when we might start looking at the RO zones and those types of
When we
zones?
finish our evaluation of the R2, we only have so much capacity and time. When we finish the R2 zone, we'll move over to the R1 and the RO zones.
So you're doing the R4, then you're going to go R2, and then you're going to go to where? You said when you finish the R2.
Right, I didn't say anything about the R4. When we finish, the critical piece is the naturally occurring affordable housing and putting the protections in to preserve those properties.
Critical for you. So I'm asking, when will we get to the RO?
When we finish this stage, like I said, when we
So
finish.
that's next?
Yes.
Short
next.
answer is that's next.
Next.
Okay.
Next. Okay? We can only do so much. The
That-
zoning
that-
subcommittee
I
met for
think
several
that's okay.
hours,
I'm just-
and at the end, their heads were spinning.
And
it was Carol and Tony, thank you, and Jake, and Bill Harrison.
We really didn't reach any kind of consensus on what we were doing.
Right, we came up with new ideas.
Who's on that zoning committee?
Bill Harrison, Carol Willis, Tony Ian Wally, and Jake Neiman. I also want to just give a correction. There was a reference tonight to the letter that we received from the Fair Share Housing Center on our fourth round housing element and fair share plan. It was prepared as part of as part of a compliance review, we submitted the plan to the court for compliance review. The Fair Share Housing Center letter praised Montclair for the variety of approaches to maintaining affordable housing. What it did require, because of course we're saying we fully met our obligation because of all of the housing activity that has been conducted, is they now want documents. They want, and that would not be provided, those kinds of documents, the individual deed restrictions are not provided in a housing plan. They want us to submit to them all the documentation to support all of the units that we're trying to get credits for, which is not unusual, so that's what we're going to be working on.
And you have no problem submitting that, because I know
I
you've
do not,
documented
no.
everything, so
They're
I don't know
doing
what
their due
is there.
diligence, and they want the backup, and we will
Yeah.
provide the backup.
Yeah, thank you, Janice, because I know.
But they did praise us, which is, you never really hear that from the Fair Share Housing Center.
Is this this is what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't have a chance to read through it all yet. I just got
Is that
it.
something you could circulate to the board?
I will.
Because I
I got it today, so I
oh,
will.
okay. Because I think that,
Even though it's
just,
dated August 27th, I got it today, and
Okay.
I'll share it with everybody.
Whenever you
hear-
get
hearing
something
that-
that says, "Dear Judge," something, I guess people just get nervous. I didn't even have a chance to read it yet, so I didn't know.
That's because everybody's housing plan is submitted to, it's called the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Court.
Mhm.
So the court is accepting them, and if anybody wants to object, nobody objected to our plan.
No.
This is really a.
Is the time for objection over?
Oh, yes, it is.
It is,
So
thank
this
you.
is really just advisory from the Fair Share Housing Center that we need to provide them with all the backup in order, before they'll sign off on our compliance certification. So, okay?
great. I think that sounds positive. So, good job, everyone. And all the hard work on the housing plan.
And wait, does that tie into the revision of the redevelopment area, the redevelopment district? I think we should, how do we go about doing that, tackling that?
I will bring it up with the Economic Development Committee, that there's been a suggestion that we either eliminate that redevelopment plan or update that redevelopment plan. I think we need some further discussion.
I agree, but I
With
want to know how
input-
we start that process, because I think we should do it sooner than later. Because at this, right, because at this point, whoever wants to
Yeah.
build something there is going to submit an application so that they are not
Robertson
subject.
has a client.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think part of it, I want us to, I know we need to move quickly, but I also don't want us to have a knee-jerk reaction to
Agreed.
just say,
Agreed.
delete the plan. Immediately it's gone, because I don't know if the underlying zoning is going to be any better. I think it requires some discussion and
That's exactly, if we
evaluation.
could come up with an underlying zoning that works, we may not need a redevelopment plan. So I'm not convinced that we need a redevelopment plan.
Well, I think we should probably start the process in case, right?
I
So let's
agree
get,
with you.
let's make
Yeah.
sure that we're taking multiple tracks here and we're not
Okay.
just relying on one approach.
So what I can do is I can ask the redevelopment committee, if they want to meet, don't know who's on the redevelopment committee, to talk about, what they think is the next best step. And meanwhile, I suggest that the Economic Development Committee talk about it as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, Ms. Willis.
The town council
Do we
that
have-
has to initiate.
Is your mic on? Just so we capture your good thoughts.
Well, then.
Yeah.
Isn't it the council that has to take the lead on the redevelopment plan? I don't think so. It came from the council, prior council. It is not us who has the authority to scrap or to amend or whatever. They can show it to us, but we don't get to do that in here. Is that not correct?
I believe it's the council that
The
The
council-
council has to really do that.
But we
Look
may-
at the redevelopment plan and say we want to do something different.
The council has the authority.
Right.
Okay, you can make a recommendation to
Correct.
the council. The council can actually ask the planning board to create the redevelopment plan, or the council can do the redevelopment plan themselves, acting as the redevelopment agency. There's lots of options, but I think what's important is good communication.
Yeah, and I think
Okay,
using
but
our.
very
Just because I'm
important.
still confused.
Sure.
It should start with the council, is that correct?
It could start either way.
They have to delegate it to us.
It could start either way, I think. I think we can, as the redevelopment subcommittee, we can decide on a plan, and I think it'd be helpful to communicate with the Economic Development Committee of the council But we can do it, and I think we should. Given the discussions tonight, I particularly like Mr. Ian Wally's suggestion
Yes.
of kind of like a step down from Bloomfield Avenue.
Agreed.
I think we can do some of the legwork so that it moves faster, hopefully, through the council.
If I may, I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee, and we have a lot on our plate, and I personally wouldn't mind to see, and I think you guys are the experts versus me or the other people on the committee. We're not experts. You guys are the experts. You've done this a lot. So my recommendation would be for you guys in the redevelopment subcommittee to take a look at this and give some suggestions to the EDC, and we can take it from there.
Well, I certainly would not mind leading a subgroup of the council and taking a look at this first, since Councilor Lockman has too much on her plate, and I think that it should start there. So I would get a ad hoc committee, as we often do, of 2 other people that are interested in doing that from the council, and we'll be happy to take a look and start there. We will be in communication with you, Janice, and other people.
Okay.
Leave that to the council to make that decision. Yes, Mr. Neiman.
In having this conversation, I just want to think about it in the context of like that prior or the current redevelopment plan, I should say, like had a set of goals, and those goals seem to have been make the lots bigger, make the buildings bigger, and it failed at that. And so I think we got to start with, rather than buildings too big, buildings too small, we got to start with what's the goal of the redevelopment plan, and how do we go about making sure it's successful.
Jacob, I think you're absolutely right. We talk about smaller buildings, and particularly on these side streets.
Yeah.
And we've actually, the planning board has, in the council in the past, has rezoned the properties that are just off of Bloomfield Avenue. The planning board's been pushing for 4-story buildings for forever, and previous councils have not supported that. So,
But that's why I think it's really important that who's on that redevelopment committee, because for many people in the township who may or may not be represented on all these different committees, affordability is paramount. That would be number one. Trying to find some way to ensure that we have houses from, that are affordable to all of the people that are represented here by and large. And if you don't, and you just, put people on that aren't as excited about maintaining affordability and or the diversity that includes all of the different people, including the African Americans, who are the one group that are, going down in larger numbers, then you end up at a place that may be very repulsive for people who have been here for generations, trying to bring out the beauty of the diversity.
just to refresh everybody's memory, the redevelopment subcommittee is Mr. Campbell, Mr. Borshoff, and Councilor Lockman.
So you're going to be involved no matter what.
So,
Yeah.
and my suggestion is if you have an ad hoc committee, Mayor, bring everybody together and let's bring in the expertise of all the board members who've sat through this meeting and evaluated these properties and evaluated this redevelopment plan with the members of the public and the other, whomever you think needs to be brought into the discussion. I think that would be a good idea.
Absolutely will. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay.
And I like, when you read Just Action, as I'm sure
You
you already
read
have.
it?
I'm down to the last chapter. I haven't gotten the last chapter done.
It's good though, right?
But it's
everything in there is what I've been talking about for decades.
Right, it's a list of
wonderful.
things that will help, and zoning alone is not going to do it, but zoning is one of the steps that can
Correct.
help. So,
Yes,
I appreciate your
yes.
comments on that. And I think the suggestions in that book are good ones.
Yep, me too.
Jan, can you update this?
I can't wait to have
Yeah, wait,
the conversation.
The addresses and the contact information for the...
Okay, I'll send
Yeah.
around an update.
Do we have to pay any
And
bills?
the committees, who's on what committee?
I can't hear what you're saying.
The who's on what committee.
It's the updated
Who's
committee
on
roster,
first, like,
Yeah.
you're on
addresses and things
Yeah,
like that.
that was a
Absolutely.
while ago.
All right, bills are next.
I don't believe I saw Arthur's bills this time around, so it's not even a question. Motion to
Second.
approve the bills?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
You said motion to
move
pay the
adjournment.
bills. Motion to adjourn now.
Second.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
I thought you were making a motion.
Have a good night,
to-
Oh,
everyone.
apologies, Mary. Yeah, mine was...